pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We could do the attendance. I believe, though, that'll be rather simple tonight because I believe I see 9 people. We have a full committee tonight.
Actually, 11.
Sorry, 11 people. So all in attendance. And that says 7:10. My phone says 7:06. Okay. So we did the call to order. We did the pledge. You know who's here. The third item on the agenda tonight is discussion and vote to approve rules and process used by the committee. I want to thank Jay Edwards for having this issue put up to the beginning of the agenda while we're still all thinking clear and not starry-eyed. So this, I think we had an earlier discussion at some point where we said that overall we'd adopt Robert's Rules of Order. I think we had a, not a consent, but a consensus to that at some point. So that seems straightforward. And then I mainly, in line with what the solicitor had said, wanted to talk about, from the standpoint of, in addition to Robert's rules, maybe a slight modification if necessary, or just a general, like, to how we're going to handle, like, when we're going to handle voting on the budgets and whatnot. And that was my main concern, is just more than anything of just like timing of votes and also like final votes versus preliminary votes. I think that's really the main issue. I think hopefully most agree that's kind of the main issue. So just so we all understand what's going on. Yes, Jen?
And then are there any other items that you were going to add to that?
Not really, no. I mainly just wanted to go over, like, my main thing was just kind of just sort of like preliminary votes maybe, or versus permanent votes, and the timing thereof. Pretty much that was it.
And Jay, were you referring to anything other than how we discuss issues together? I'm wondering,
Yeah.
Specifically, I'm wondering, last year and the year before, we discussed how we would listen to public commentary as we approach different budgets for different departments.
Okay.
So, so I wasn't sure if that was part of what we were discussing today.
Oh, we could. I hadn't even considered that, actually. We can discuss that as well if people think that's necessary to discuss. I hadn't even considered it. So that wasn't even on my radar. So we can discuss that as well. Sure. Why don't we can discuss that first? How's that? So, do you want to lead that discussion since you brought it up, or?
I'm not prepared to
Okay.
lead that discussion.
Does anyone else want to lead that discussion?
Of course, I have something to, okay.
Oh, you are? Okay. Was this, I have a question. So last week when we said we'd bring this in, was this really the topic that you were thinking about?
Well, it's all part of it.
Okay.
I mean,
I didn't know.
We already discussed that Robert's rules of roost,
Mm-hmm.
and how we're going to vote, and we're going to, how we're going to do preliminary votes. And
Well, I don't know that we finished that discussion, but okay, yeah.
But what I wanted to get around to is how we conduct ourselves with
Okay,
each other and with the public.
okay,
So my first concern is, everybody is going to get involved in discussions. some of these discussions are going to get heated. Everybody needs to be able to voice their opinion on any given subject as it comes up. What we have done in the past is we started around the room, gave everybody 3 to 5 minutes to give a brief statement of their case, and then if more discussion was needed, we could do that. The other thing is, you're the guy that's going to recognize any given speaker, be it us or the public. So once you recognize one of us, everybody else needs to respect that, not try to talk over them, not try to interject, let them finish. The only exception would be if you as the chairman decide somebody's getting off topic or off of the agenda, you can stifle it. The exception to that would be if we have a witness sitting over here, like say the town administrator, and we're asking him questions. So let's just say it's Jennifer's turn to ask him questions. Well, it's not going to happen maybe in 5 minutes because it takes time for him to answer and go back and forth. And of course, public comment needs to be limited also. We can't have somebody come up to the podium and think they're going to speak for a half an hour on any given subject. I have seen that happen at other meetings, not necessarily here. So we need to have some sort of time frame for the public to speak on an agenda item.
Okay, so my question's first of all, last year, did you adopt a similar set of rules like this? I wasn't here last year on the
I was just
committee.
going to bring, we had
Yeah, we
decided on like language that said if someone came to the podium, they could, I don't remember exactly how it was worded, but like 3 to 5 minutes.
Right.
But they could talk about things that were on the current agenda. It kept people focused, so they weren't talking about something that happened with a previous budget committee 100 years ago, but if there was something on the budget, on the agenda that they felt was important, they could come in and as a citizen talk about it, and within a certain time frame.
Yeah, and what we also did is we put it, after we did the pledge and the roll call, we had a standing agenda item that allowed for public comment. And most, I think, the vast majority of the meetings, no one had anything to say, but at least gave the opportunity if there was someone from the public who wanted to address us or ask questions, that could do so. The challenge was more is that once we got into discussions about the individual budget items, things like that, and if someone from the public wanted to come up, I think we had left it sort of at the discretion of the chairs to recognize that person and allow him or her to speak. The real key is, and I think this may be part of, Jay, was making sure things are on topic and that we can continue with our deliberations. Mm-hmm. And there had been, I guess, in prior, before we came on, when Cecil was that there was no opportunity officially to allow people to come up, and I guess whether they were recognized or not. But we felt last year at least to give people the opportunity and have it standing on the agenda and put it early rather than have them wait until 10:30 at night if they wanted to address us.
Okay, so you were chair, how did it work?
I thought it worked very well in terms of having allowing the opportunity for the public to come and address us. We're elected officials. We have this meeting. We have these deliberations. They can see us on, but this would give them an official opportunity if someone wanted to speak. As I mentioned, I think only a couple of people took advantage of that during the whole 3 months that we were doing our
This is
discussions.
the agenda item toward the beginning.
Correct. What we do is just, it would be item number, whatever it was, 2 or 3, public comment. Anyone from the audience? No? We moved on to the next one. The more challenging one was when we would get into some of the discussion with an expert department head or whomever it was, and then if someone from the public wanted to come up and either ask questions or make comments, we did allow that. And that's where it tends to eat up a lot of time if someone doesn't stay on topic.
I guess under Robert's rules, well, I guess formally speaking, I guess strictly, going back to the Cecil days, right? Strictly speaking, if it's not a public hearing, then there would be, then you don't have to allow for that, I guess. That's, I guess, perhaps one extreme. Another extreme, or another way to do it is to weave it in like you did. And then under Robert's rules, of course, you have the, and like I've seen, I can close my eyes and see like Denise DeGear's doing this, where she's really good at it actually, where she, if you have a motion and discussion, you have a motion, second, discussion, and then often I can just see her doing it where, okay, the public's allowed to speak, we're gonna close the public discussion, and, some more discussion. So, I'm just not, I'm just sort of talking out loud here. That would be the kind of a middle ground, maybe.
That makes sense.
Maybe a middle ground as opposed to just a interwoven one. I don't know. I don't really, haven't thought about this. This is,
So, can we play it by ear as we've discussed without having to make a specific motion?
Well,
Because that's a lot to write up.
it is a lot, and we're not really, that motion would be hard to pull together immediately.
Could
I
I?
don't know that it needs to be in a motion.
But a consensus, just a consensus of the committee that we're going to allow this, or we're going to, and
Excuse,
I
can I
think that
say,
would-
There might be some other opinions on that.
okay,
want to allow.
sure thing.
I just had one comment on allowing anyone to speak, is that I think we should vote on a time limit, if possible, because I think people know ahead of time how much time they have. They can get it across probably in 3 minutes, or 4 minutes, or 5 minutes, whatever.
Yeah, I think that did
And
too.
also too, narrowing the scope. I want to say it said something like, could talk to things that were pertaining, that were on the agenda for that day. So if you weren't talking about lighting, you can't have somebody come in and talk about lighting. And it also allowed them to ask questions about the budget too, as we were discussing it too, so that they can make more informed decisions. But I think I liked the narrow scoped, and I liked the time limit.
And Cecil did tell them, he would remind them, you have X number of minutes, whatever it was,
It was 3.
3 minutes.
3 minutes.
And he
Yes.
said, and when my hand goes up, you're at 1 minute left.
Okay, and the nice thing about the 3-minute rule is, going over is 4 minutes, and going over is not 6 minutes, so that's, if, you know what I'm saying, I'm just trying to.
The majority, we had nobody here.
Yeah. It wasn't like the year prior.
Well,
The
no,
year
I'm-
prior
right,
was like,
I remember that,
yeah.
But I'm also
was here.
thinking with the interwoven one too, where, when people do get up to speak on a contentious topic or something, that one, people will be here, and those are the ones that might go over the 3-minute can turn to 3.5, but at least it's not turning into 6 or 7 minutes if we say 3, that's all I'm getting at. Because you know how those things are.
Last year went really smooth with it.
It did.
The scope was nice because it didn't allow for that off-tangent type thing.
Okay, so I guess trying to summarize it, and Jay's got some notes, so I'm going to rely on Jay a little bit, but summarize at least this part of the discussion. Well, no, I'm not going to summarize it because I haven't heard yet from Joe, and Ruth wanted a time limit. Joe apparently has something to say. I got to recognize
Well,
Joe.
I just want to start right at where we started with the preliminary votes and kind of tie this together.
Okay,
All right, we're going to be receiving information without hard numbers from pretty much all department heads coming up. It takes some time to generate at least a preliminary, draft for the final budget. So up to that point, we don't, like I said, we're just receiving the information. And I'd like to spend more time with the department heads and less time. I understand the public may want to speak, but we can't really tell them anything back yet. So all we're really going to hear is testimony for some program that they support, which is fine, and that could be put in writing and submitted, which would save us a lot of time. Because if you get a handful of letters from people who are interested in these programs, it's a lot more to me, because I see they took a little time to write it down and hand it to me. So, I've seen in the past I've watched these meetings where people just got up and bashed the budget committee, and I don't want to see that, and I don't want to hear it, because I'll go off back at them and it'll get ugly. So until the end, where we have some final numbers, maybe we'll have a meeting or two that we have, but it's more towards where the public hearing is coming up, towards the end of the budget, before we start hearing from the public. I'm not finished, please. I'm saying this because of what maybe last year wasn't that bad, and the year before, but I've seen, you know, I've been watching these meetings since '92, so there's been good and bad, and I've seen where people wanted to be open to the public, and then it was just nothing more than just bashing members of the committee because of their political, you know. I've seen too much of that. And like I said, the testimony for a program, I'd rather you take some pictures, you know, show me what your kid's doing and why your kid need that, and send it in a letter to me where I can see that. And that'll convince me more than just coming to the mic and saying, you know, yeah, yes, and let's do it, you know. I don't know. Prove it to me, in other words.
So in writing in advance.
And any information they can supply along with it that's going to show me that what their word, I'm not saying their word's not good enough. I'm just saying, prove it to me. You know, I'm from Missouri, show me, you know?
Yes.
I think sometimes too that some credit should be given to people that do come and attend meetings and that they want to be active by coming to attending meetings and that get up to the podium and want to discuss something. I think your position as chair, if someone's going off or over the time limit, would it be to bring it back in? But we're an elected body, and I think we should hear people. If they took the time to come out, and we're meeting in winter, if they came out in rain and snow, and they feel passionate about something that they would like us to talk to, I think we should give them the benefit of the doubt for that and let them speak.
There's also been very few people by and large at the beginning of meetings. And then when each department has come and spoken to the budget that they're asking for, it's often been the most useful time for both our body as the budget committee and for any citizen that is interested to come and ask questions then when we have the heads of each department who can respond to the specific information with the most detail. So I would be worried about cutting off a useful exchange between the public by saying we're not going to let anyone talk until the last third of our meetings. I'd rather, your discretion makes sense that you're there, you can, if things get really out of hand and people are chatting too much, then you can bring it in. But the openness when people come is useful.
Sherry?
Okay, so, I mean, maybe we can come to some sort of compromise to have, if there's a way to put something on the website that allows people to, you know, write in if they're going to. I don't necessarily think that having, if what Brendan was saying was that they had it at the beginning that people could come up and then they would have, you know, the discussions about things. If we're going to ask them, I think either having it during the time we're discussing that or maybe even at the end so that they know they heard the discussion. You know, I really am more often towards what you were saying, towards if there's a section where we're discussing it instead of having them come up or offering for them, then they miss the opportunity and then we start discussing something, they get interested, to at least have it be more towards, you know, the actual part that we're discussing so that we're not having to have several times where it's open for people to come up. You know what I'm saying? Not just the beginning and then they can also come up. Is that what you were saying?
Well,
that they had opportunity in the beginning?
We had a
and then
standing agenda item that allowed for public comment, as I mentioned.
There
If
were
it was
not
used
very
2 or 3
few.
times during the whole time, it would have been. But then we did, during the course of our discussions, after a motion had made and we went to discussion, we did allow people to come up.
So I'm wondering if was that only, a motion was made, this goes back to what I was saying earlier about the technique that I've witnessed Denise DiMederos is that only, was that like generally when the motion was made, seconded, discussion by the committee, any comments from the public? Was it always as part of, like, if we were just having general testimony without a motion, without a second, then would necessarily you allow, if it wasn't part of like a motion, second discussion thing? I'm trying to find a compromise here. I'm trying to find something, you know, so.
And I don't recall whether, we certainly weren't that precise. There were probably
Okay.
times where there was open discussions and someone would come up to the podium and ask to be recognized, and we would allow it. But I think in general, the principle was is that as we were discussing, there was a decision that we were about to vote on, and there was an opportunity for the public to speak. I mean, part of it was just basically saying, will we allow the public to speak during our meetings? And there was, the majority of us thought, yeah, we're elected officials, and it's fair to have citizens of Tiverton or others come up and speak. But there was a clear understanding that that could be abused, and that we needed to limit the time and to make sure we had the ability to move forward with what we needed to do. And whether we got lucky, who knows, but last year it just didn't end up an issue, but it was an agreement, I think, from the committee that we would allow the public to speak.
If I could.
Joe?
So we want people to have access to department heads to ask questions about their budget, but they don't actually have to do it here. I mean, you can get a hold of a department head 5 days a week at his office, make an appointment, through the administrator or the clerk. So if you have questions on the budget, you can go right to the department head during the week. You don't have to wait and come to the meeting and be on camera to do it. If you're that concerned, you want to know questions on the budget. So the only reason people are going to come here is to advocate for something in that budget, which I understand. And that was my point. Again, put it in writing, put some documentation in there to show me this is why I'm advocating. It's going to benefit my child because of this, and then I'll know, and I'll see what they're talking about. But like I said, and that means more to me, and it would save this committee a lot of time, I think, because, I don't know. I mean, I can remember times when we had to have Wednesday meetings because we just had a heavy load. We had a lot of votes to take, and we really wanted to work on the stuff and, knock it down and make sure we had it right. So while I'm open to public debate towards the end, when we have a final document, we have a public hearing, I know that's too late to change it, but if we have sort of a pre-time, like at the last couple of meetings when people can come in and talk, when we have an actual document that we can discuss and we're not going to be changing numbers the next day, it makes more sense to me to have the public speak then, when we have something to present. Then they'll be asking us questions. But if they have questions about a department head's budget, again, they can go to the department head any day of the week. Thank you.
Jeff?
Yeah, Jen?
So, again, just kind of, I'm actually surprised that we're having this much debate about letting people talk. We were elected. I think there's a time, and if there's a structure to allow people to talk that take the time out, other bodies allow this. Other elected bodies allow this. So why there's so much discussion whether we should is, we can go to a town council meeting, we could ask to be recognized and stand at the podium during the allotted time and discuss anything that's on their agenda. Why is feedback such thing? Like, I understand there's been years that it's been difficult and people did not conduct themselves in manners that were appropriate, but on the other side of it,
And they're still around. I'm sorry.
Mr. Souza, I understand what you're saying, but on the other side of it, there's some benefit to feedback. There's some benefit, and I think if you close it off, it makes you a closed body, and it's like you don't want to hear from the people that elected you, or you don't want to hear from citizens that have concerns, and I don't think that that's fair.
If I could, I said at the last two meetings before the public hearing would be the appropriate time to have the public come in and speak to us, when we can still make a change before the public hearing. But before we have a final draft, we can't tell them where those numbers are going to be and if we can fund that program until we have that final draft, which is revenue numbers. I think the state gets them, in April, so we know if the car tax and everything, is going to come in and all those school things we get and, reimbursements. So those numbers will be final then we can look at where we're at. And then we can tell them yes or no to their questions. Prior to that,
The one thing that
It's a
will
guess.
be difficult is our timing and knowing what our timing is going to be, because it's kind of an organic process, how much we get through every meeting. And so knowing it's going to be the last 2 meetings, we're not going to know exactly when it is. It seems that allowing people to speak at a timely manner when the issue is at hand, and we have the department heads that have the information to exchange, and the most knowledgeable people to confer with, that would be the ideal time to do that. We didn't
Not
have.
a lot of time, we're talking about 3 minutes.
Yeah, and we hardly had anybody. And an example, like last year, I thought the library would, you all know, I'm an advocate of the library, I thought they would speak a lot more about what they were doing, and they didn't. They hardly said anything. So I think with your discretion, if it gets out of hand, then it can be reshaped. But
Well, repealed, if it's something that gets out of hand. It's always something we can revisit and revote on. But to cut it off at the beginning and not even allow the opportunity?
I don't think we're talking about cutting it off, it's just, we're talking about how many minutes and when. So we're not cutting anything off. I don't think anyone wants to do that.
No, I don't think we are. The key to all this, though, is the chairman. At any time, he can redirect the person, or he can rule them out of order. So if they start, well, I can remember when Joe did this, and I can remember when Ruth did that, and all that, well, that's not appropriate.
God forbid when I did what.
Or Jeff, or me, or any of us. Well, that's not appropriate. So what you have to do is give them a time limit. They have to stay within the agenda posted for that meeting, and they have to stay on topic. And the guy who decides that will be the chairman.
are we gonna have a cop here, take them off if they don't wanna leave? Like the ones that do, they just stand there and keep.
Well,
Jay is right, because when
Okay.
Cecil was chair and we had the problem, he didn't stop them, and that was the problem. We had
There's
to
also-
use the chair stop them.
Exactly. Somebody has to be in charge. We know who that's going to be, or should be.
You promised.
that's fine.
And
So,
leave it to him.
And,
I'd like to-
and Jeff, many of them came, Joe, with a letter that they read and then gave us a copy.
Well, they can just
So they
submit the
kind of
letter and
did,
we
but
can
they
just read
did
it.
both. They did both.
within the post.
Oh, so that's what it is, they wanna get their voice out on TV. That's what I'm saying, it's a cheerleader.
No, it's not.
No, well, what's the difference in if they just give us a letter and we accept it? It's a public document, anybody can read
And
it.
it's a public hearing.
Well, regardless of whether we require a letter, we can encourage people to write a letter, because then it helps us prepare.
Not just a letter,
we
but some
can-
documentation to
Yeah,
prove
that's what
their
you said.
case.
Right, we
Joe,
can
that's a-
encourage
That's a
it.
great
Okay.
idea.
So I'd like to, Jay came the most prepared, Jen brought it up, and I thought boo about this before the meeting. Jay came the most prepared. Jay, can you go over one more time your 2 or 3 bullets, just to refresh them in my head?
Bullets?
Well, whatever it was you said initially,
All right.
whatever they were, because I just you came the most organized for this topic.
When we're doing the topic,
Mm-hmm,
budget item, whatever it is, the basic thing is, everybody needs to be able to express their opinion
okay,
for an equal amount of time initially.
mm-hmm,
The best way to do that is the way we did it last year, and we did it when you were here. You start at one side or the other of the room, you work your way around. Do you have something to say? No. Do you have something to say? Yes. Use your time to do that. The next person may not, the next person may, and it goes around. Then we'll have maybe more discussion or maybe not. It depends on the subject.
mm-hmm.
During that time, whoever you have recognized to speak has the floor. Nobody else does. Nobody in the public, none of us, until you're done. You've used your time. Third thing, when we're questioning a witness, if you want to call him that, town department head, town employee, whoever it is, number one, be respectful. Don't accuse them of every, like you're doing this, you're doing that. A lot of these people that we're going to be talking to weren't here last year. We got a new police chief, we got a new fire chief. We don't have a fire chief. We have a new director of public works.
He's new.
New superintendent.
These people did not make the decisions for last year. They've lived with them. Now they're presenting their arguments. We need to recognize that, be respectful to them, they should be respectful to us. Public, we'll have to decide what we're going to do with the public, but whatever we do, again, the chairman is in control of the meeting, and he will decide if they're on point, if they're digressing, or if they're being rude. And
Okay.
that's pretty much it, as far as I'm
Thank you,
concerned.
Jay. So,
Excuse me 1 minute.
Is he okay?
you okay, Joe? I guess, I think he's fine.
He's okay.
I think he just excused up the table. So is everyone okay with the first three things that Jay said? And maybe I'll try to move this along. So a time limit, maybe we could say, this would be for the budget committee members. So we start, I remember that now from 2 years ago. We start, go around the table. That seemed to work well. I remember that. So is 3 minutes too long for the budget committee members, or is that reasonable?
I
Or
think it's good.
You can say a lot in 3 minutes.
what's that?
You can say a lot in 3 minutes.
All right.
If
So
you get
3
your-
minutes.
If you get your ducks in a row.
All right, let's
Right.
just say the goal is 3 minutes unless, unless
concise.
we can't do 3, we'll do, some night we might have to do 1, but the goal will be 3 minutes, okay?
The order would go this way and then it would go that way.
Okay, remind me of that.
Just like to create
Yeah, I get it, okay, reversing
I
order.
don't have a
okay.
preference.
Remind me of that. Okay, is everyone okay, let's just take them one by one. Is everyone okay with that type of thing? Okay, great, good, one check, one. Okay, consensus. So, the second thing Jay mentioned, who I recognize only has the floor. That helps me out tremendously. And if I break my own rule, I need you to admonish me. Is everyone okay with that?
Yes.
Okay. Great. And the third thing is that we are, especially with all the new department heads and whatnot, very respectful of them and not accusational, and especially in the sense of they're all new, and many of our gripes or historical things were not created by them, and that they are presented with them and have to deal with them. And we all have plenty of those to talk about. So that would be the third item. Is everyone okay with that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, we've got some progress anyway. Thank you, Jay. Now, the tough one is the public one. And the tough one is the public one. And I do believe at some point in the process that obviously we need to allow for public input. And I do not have, personally, don't have a problem with either topic, with either this open at the beginning. I don't think it's going to get used that much at the beginning. I don't think it's going to be a problem. The bigger one will be the one that's interlaced. I do share Joe's concern. I think that we need to. I'm not sure about if that should be buried into motions or at any time, and I think that the amount of time. So I would like to propose that we limit the public's time. I'm not sure if it's in every meeting or not, but no matter what, when a member of the public is limited to 3 minutes, can we agree on that?
Yes.
Okay, I'm just trying to make progress here. So we'll agree on that much, okay? Are we okay with the 3 minutes? Okay, so when they do speak,
Don't say everybody.
3 minutes. What's that?
I'm only agreeing this if it's the last 2 meetings.
I understand. I haven't said that. So when it comes up, now, the next swing is, Joe, I'm gonna point at Joe, because Joe, are you not okay with, an agenda item that's just at the beginning, like it's just an open discussion one, or are you opposed to that as well?
Like I said, we got a heavy workload. You know, if they want to submit something in writing, I'll be happy to read it, and I'll have time to read it if they get it in before the meeting, because it'll be in the mailbox, and I can pick it up, so. You know, as far as having people come here and do presentations, I feel like we need to stick to department heads and get the information in first. I can't say it more than once, I guess.
Okay, so would this be, I'm just, for that one, which I don't think is that controversial, would it be, as a compromise on that one, would it be too far out to say that if someone's gonna plan to come to the meeting and make a presentation in the first agenda item, that we ask that they submit something in writing
Agenda
beforehand?
request,
Is that too much to ask?
with some
In that
documentation
scenario?
to show me what they're gonna show us.
Is that too onerous, or?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think
I
it's,
do. I
I mean,
think
they
it
took
is.
their time, they came in, they're gonna talk for 3 minutes, I mean.
But can I say something? It's fine to talk, as you said, after the chair of the department has given us all the information, because then they have the information to ask questions about. But at the beginning of the meeting, they don't. That might be a general comment, and they can definitely submit it ahead of time. That gives me a chance to see, okay, what are they saying? Maybe I can look up something, research something. So I like the idea of the writing, and I think that makes people clarify their own thoughts too. So it's just, and then, like you are all saying, then they can talk after the department head, after the department head speaks, we discuss, and then they can ask a question, type of thing.
I just don't understand why we're making a special rule. If you go to town council and they have open forum, you can stand up at the podium, say whatever you need to say.
But it's what I said,
and
it's after the.
Yeah, but I don't have what I'm
It's
saying.
after the committee talks first, the town council talks first, and then they can come up, is what
And
they
they
say
like
too.
meeting till 1 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
I mean,
They
I
go in
think we're-
executive session
I think-
till after midnight a lot because of all that. I'm just saying that we wasted a lot of time on this already, I realize.
So I want to ask Brendan a question. Brendan, when you did the open thing last year, was it limited to the agenda, or was it on any topic at all?
No, limited.
Limited to the agenda.
Limited.
Oh, it
And we
was.
specifically, because of the year prior, that was when you all were on, and that was a really bad year, where it just, the comments were a lot, and it kept going. When that was written last year, it was written to rein that in. It was like you could come and speak as long as it was on the agenda pertaining to an agenda item. Like, you couldn't come in and be like, I'm gonna talk about 100 years ago, something that
Okay, so even
happened,
the
or I'm
open
gonna,
session
I'm not gonna
has to be on the
personally
agenda.
attack board members.
Oh, yeah, on the
It was
agenda.
like you had a narrowed scope as to what you could bring comments to, and it had to pertain to that particular agenda.
Okay.
And it worked,
It
and we
did.
spent way less time than we are tonight just discussing it.
Okay, that's fine. I
So-
just- yeah, just, okay.
You know, and the other thing that I noticed at a town council meeting a couple weeks ago was, if there was a lot of that meeting on the 27th, that there was a lot of discussion. At some point, it got cut off. It was like, you've already spoken, like, don't get back in, get back in line. And I don't think we're gonna have anything like that. But it was like, okay, you've already gone, we've heard what you've had to say, and they've, not allowed like a turntable where they can just keep coming back and making a
Can we
comment.
just vote on it? Maybe just end it? I mean, I'll put it in the form of a motion that, I'll make a motion that we have, public can address the committee for the last 2 meetings prior to the public hearing. I'll put that in the form of a motion.
Prior to the public hearing?
So you're saying the public can't speak, can't come? and
They can
speak
address, they
or
can
ask
send us all they want.
until the last
They can
2
send all the
weeks
letters they
before?
want to us.
Add that into your motion then, please.
Well, they can do that anyway. Anybody can send a letter to the budget committee via, I guess, through Nancy. But
So
is there
that-
no
that-
second?
So that wouldn't allow people to speak at the meetings?
Not until the last 2
very last-
meetings, not until our last 2 meetings when we have an actual budget pretty much in our hand that we can discuss.
That would muzzle the public.
Well, that's my motion. There's no second, there's no second.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor, live motion on the floor, we have a second. Any further discussion?
I just want to make sure I have how Joe phrased it, so it's no till the second.
I'm sorry I don't have the calendar in front of me, but basically,
last two meetings.
It'd be the last two meetings before the public hearing.
The last two meetings before the public hearing could actually be 2 days in a row.
No,
Because
the two Thursday
has
meetings.
happened the last
Well, then it
couple
should be the
years.
two Thursday meetings for the last 2 weeks.
And
Which could be
tradition-
4 meetings, it could be
It
the last
could
4
be
meetings.
4 meetings,
And that's when we're voting anyway.
So it'd be the last 2 weeks.
We've voted on sections of the budget
That's also,
throughout the whole process, that there
But we
are-
didn't
there are
take the
some-
you don't take the final vote until you have the final draft. Then, as a committee, we vote to put that forward to the public hearing.
right,
So
which
they-
is where
So
people,
before so once we take that vote, we'd already have one of the, because we take that vote in the last meeting, pretty much. So we'd have 2 public hearings. We'd have a public hearing here, where people can come in and speak on the budget,
I
a week
understand.
before we vote on
I
it.
understand what you're saying.
And then the week, we vote, so after they finish speaking, then we would vote on it for the final. So there'd be
It
2
was-
shots
it
at the
wasn't-
apple.
It wasn't a problem last year.
And they could send us all the letters they want with all the documentation to present their case prior to that. That way we'll be familiar with them when they come in and we can give them some answers. And it won't be cold answers coming, why didn't you do this? I don't know, why didn't you ask me that 4 weeks ago? So, it's about build-up too. Well, I made the motion, seconded.
So the 2 days, the 2 meetings have been changed to 2 weeks, is that what I heard?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, any other discussion?
I'm gonna go on record that I don't agree with that.
Well,
I
you
don't.
just vote against
I have the
it.
floor. I have the floor.
If you vote against it, you will be going on record to say you voted against it.
Jen has
He
the
just
floor.
quieted me like he's gonna quiet
Let's
the
have-
public, so
let's-
I'll leave it alone.
Let's have,
I'm sorry,
No, I'm
Joe,
good.
let Jen go. I just gotta let Jen go.
No, I'm good.
It's not about
'Cause that's
quieting the public,
essentially-
because the public has every opportunity to write letters to us to express their opinion.
I'll
Joe.
write you a letter with my opinion.
too.
We can go on.
Okay, anybody else have a discussion? I can do a round robin on this, I don't think we need to, but I'm happy to. Does anybody else have any discussion on this?
Yeah, I like what Joe says. It has a lot of logic to it, and I go by logic when I do things. And we haven't had problems last year for too many people speaking too long, so that's why it may be fine to do it the way that you want to do it, but it can get out of hand, so we will have to change it if it doesn't get out of hand. And I think I would be I like your ideas, and I would like to also have something on the agenda that's published saying, we encourage people to write in their concerns to the Budget Committee, something along those lines. And then if you'd like to follow that up, to come to the meeting, then come to the meeting. And I find it a little bit time-consuming for someone to come up and say, I would like this, 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 and this, and then we already are going to do it, and when we finally get it all done, they just pretty much, it's just wasted everybody's time. Later, when they find out we're going to do it or we're not going to do it for sure, then I think it's more appropriate to talk to us. But I like a lot of what Joe says, that's all I'm going to say.
Just real quick, if the motion was to prevail, and we got closer to the end, and we had a more final docket, we could always reopen this and vote to extend public comment a few more weeks. I'm just thinking about the earliest weeks when we're meeting, so that we can get to work and get the work done and not be distracted, because it's a lot of work. Look at the document, and there's more to come. We're going to have a stack of papers this tall by the end of the season, I guarantee it. And I got to read every one, to understand it several times, so.
Okay? Any other discussion?
Yes, I'd like to say one other thing. I don't know, I haven't seen what, when people come in to give presentations, exactly what you got, Ruth, what you're I'm not sure what exactly you're speaking of, so could somebody maybe elaborate just real quickly on what it is so you're saying that a lot of people come in to give, I understand from Joe's point that they come in to support their cause, do they typically spend a lot of time giving presentations and things like that? I realize that with us, with the way the committee is, maybe there may be more contention this year.
Well,
than
last year, they
there been
didn't spend a lot of
past.
time. They did not. I just said that last year, Sherry, they did
They
not
did not.
overdo it.
Okay.
The prior year, I do recall that there was, there were a lot of allegations made by people at the podium that weren't true about committee members, and the things just were flat out false. And so, and they were pointed and targeted and whatnot. And I'm not saying all the committee members were perfect angels either, necessarily, but certainly there was more fire coming this way, and some of the things were flat out false allegations. So I think, that is probably, I think everyone would agree, a point at which shouldn't be, A, it wasn't on the agenda, and B, it's got to be stopped. That would be an example of probably a severe case of what we're talking about. So, yeah, I'm just putting it out there.
Can I just speak? So that was a problem 2 years ago. It was rectified last year. There were no issues last year. Most meetings had no speakers come up. It was really limited. We're public officials. We should be accessible to the public. It shouldn't be that hard for them. And this is not just our budget, this is our town budget. So anyone who wants to speak, it's their budget too.
I'd like to add too that I totally support people's rights to come up and speak. I mean, if it's 3 minutes, it's 3 minutes. And if it's on topic, if it's on the agenda, then I absolutely see no problem with that from week 1 to week whatever. Well, I know we have a lot of work to do. But honestly, if someone takes the time to come in to speak and it's on the agenda and it's on topic and it's clearly not a personal attack on anybody, and if it was, then we have every right to shut that person down if they're personally attacking anybody on the committee.
You're gonna walk them out?
I'll walk them out. We also have a town sergeant.
Yeah.
Here,
You're new here, that's all I can tell you.
oh, okay, whether I'm new or not, I still, I served, okay? I understand how things work. I've been on bodies as well, and I would like to hear from the public. That's, how else am I supposed to learn too? I got to learn both sides of things, so I support people's right to come up and speak, if it's limited and controlled.
It's certainly easier for me to vote no speech, but that would be the easy way. Okay, any other discussion?
I'm sorry, one more thing. I'm going to vote against the motion only, but I love the ideas, but I'm going to vote against it because I'm fine with, I don't think there's a problem with abusing that privilege of speaking, so I think it's, just explain my reason for
Do
voting.
you want to rescind your second?
No, I like the motion.
So I'm gonna
Okay,
withdraw
so-
the motion, I made my point, and
Okay.
I'm just telling you,
So withdrawn.
if it happens, I go off, I can't be held responsible.
Okay, Joe.
All right, motion withdrawn.
So I'd like to thank you, Joe, for the discussion and the motion. Ruth for the second. So we do need to still address this, though.
Can I have a,
You got some words?
I'll put a motion,
Go ahead.
make a motion that the Budget Committee allow the public to comment on related, I'll help you with this, related agenda items. Speakers must be recognized by the chair and comments limited to 3 minutes. I can read that again. The Budget Committee allow public to comment on related items related to agenda items. Speakers must be recognized by the chair and comments limited to 3 minutes.
I need an addition, I just need this addition for unless everyone doesn't agree, that the sergeant will stop take the speaker from the podium if they do not do what the chair
I don't know if
asked him
that
to
needs
do.
to be added, that's our job.
Why do we have a sergeant here if they're
But
not
that's
going
our
to?
job. That's our job description.
It wasn't done, it wasn't ever done.
So I don't know that you can,
Kelly, you up for that?
I don't know that we can, though, in a motion, direct somebody else who's not part of the body. I just don't know if we can do that. It's it's a good,
That's fine.
I understand your
It
point.
just wasn't
but-
done from the past, so.
So I just want to make sure that, and I think it said that, I just want to make sure that I have the latitude and discretion, I think I do with that language, to control when, that's all. And I think I do, right?
Correct.
It said I did, right?
Right, yes,
The
it
chair.
must be recognized by the chair.
Must be recognized.
So I can, if I want to finish our discussion and then go there, I can throttle that. Okay, I just want to make sure of that.
Okay.
Okay,
Brendan,
so that's a motion. Is there a second?
I second.
should we not say the current agenda? Not
Yeah,
just-
current
Yeah,
agenda.
the
As-
current,
as-
the active
that's-
agenda.
Instead of
whatever.
related, current, okay.
Yeah, last year we did.
You know, something to limit it to what we're discussing at that
Current
time.
meetings agenda.
Yeah.
Okay. And who seconded that, or?
Jen,
Okay.
Jen.
Jocelyn.
So, okay, is there any more discussion on this one?
Yeah, I'd like to say I do agree with that, in addition to Joe's comments, which were valid, but I do agree that the public should be heard, and I like what you said all about that. Just, I really feel strongly about the control from the chair, so I'm just hoping that you will do that, Jeff.
Well, and I just want to say that if something does, sometimes sitting in this seat, you know, if I am asleep at the wheel, I mean, someone please just snicker my attention if I'm not catching something that I
Okay.
should be on top of. So I fully welcome that from anybody, okay? So,
Thank you.
And I appreciate that, and I'll need that, I'm sure, at some point. Thank you. Any other discussion?
So I can-
I was thinking we could have an ejection button put in over there too.
Okay, so I guess I'll call for a vote on that. So all those in favor of the motion? Opposed? Yep.
It's fine.
So, okay, so we had a consensus on the first three. We actually had a vote on the public one, and it was 10-1. Whoops, 10-1 with Joe against, okay? Super duper. Now, I had no idea we were going to even discuss that tonight. I wasn't even anticipating that. What I wanted to discuss was the voting part. So I'd like to re-lead that conversation and try to get through this in just a couple of minutes. So I would like to propose the following, and then if there's no objection, maybe someone could put in a motion and we'll just put it to bed and move on. So I would like to see that if we do take votes prior to having in our hands all of the final budgets in early March, whenever they come in, 63 days before, whenever that is, that if we do take votes on budget items, that they're preliminary, and that they can be, that it's understood that they can be revisited as basically obliterated or revisited as a primary vote after we have all that information in hand, whenever that date is, and usually it's around the first week in March, right after that. They can be revisited as a primary vote then, and in that case, it will be a final vote if it's so worded. And I'd like to see the committee's business go that way, and I think that's given that we don't have the final budgets, I think that's a way for us to move forward and make progress on a preliminary basis, yet it also preserves it. What I don't want to see happen is a vote happen prior to that, and I'm not even sure on Robert's rules how it works, but I didn't have time to look it up, but I just don't want to see votes locked in and perhaps an argument about reconsidering it after that date in March, that type of thing. I just want anybody to be able to reconsider it after that date in March. I think it's 63 days. I just want anybody to say, reconsider anything after that date as a fresh vote. That's all. So I just want to make sure that's what I'd like to see. And so everything's preliminary up to that point, and we all have it all documented. We've made some progress, but anything can be redone without having to be on the prevailing sides or any type of formality like that.
So the motion would be that all votes are preliminary until the vote on the final draft.
No. The motion would be that all votes are preliminary until the Budget Committee has received the final budgets from the town council, the school committee, the treasurer, the town clerk, and the revenue numbers. Is there one more? I think that's it by charter. No, that would be, and that would, I think those are the ones, right? I think that's it by charter.
Okay.
And any others by charter. Once we've received those by charter, when we come back and we reconvene, now we've got all the information. Okay, it's March 8th or 9th or 10th or whatever.
All right,
So now,
so moved.
thank you.
Did you get it, Sherry?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
She's writing.
So someone moved it?
Thank you.
What's up?
We don't have to worry about if someone voted against it, or we can just vote straight on, all new, and that's the final vote.
Right. So, right.
We're just
So
basically
we can make
accepting it,
progress
right?
incrementally, do some votes, but I just don't want to have a situation where we're locked into a vote prior, and then we can't reconsider it, or, you know what I mean, or someone was absent. I just don't want to have that situation on the merits.
That makes sense.
Yeah, that was what I put this on the agenda for. That's what I meant.
Well, we also, by doing it that way, we'd also get a feeling of how everybody's thinking about
Yeah.
any particular
Right,
thing.
right.
And how serious you are about what you've been, what you're thinking.
Right.
And sometimes things change, like you voted on it the first time, but
More
then
money
maybe
comes in,
something
that's
came
the
into
main thing.
consideration, or some number changed, so it's nice that you
More or
can go
less.
back and not have to.
Right.
100 rules to read.
Yeah, maybe there will be a huge surge.
We need a vote.
Revenue will swing.
Okay, super. So, it was moved, I made a statement, it seemed to be well understood. It was moved and it was seconded. It was moved by Joe, it was seconded by Mr. LaCroix, beautiful. So, any more discussion? We all understand it? Great. All those in favor? Wow, unanimous, super. Awesome, okay. Any opposed? No, great.
Not even an argument.
Okay, so we had, I'm just gonna make a note here, the vote rule. Vote after budgets. Final. Submitted. Unanimous.
Who seconded it again?
Justin LaCroix seconded it, Joe moved the statement I made. Great, awesome. So that took a little longer than I had ever anticipated, but so we are. So discussion, next item on the agenda is discussion of Public Works budget. I'd like to call forward the town administrator, and I assume Rick, our DPW chief. Or, yeah, I assume that both of you. Thank you very much for being patient through that discussion. Thank you.
So page 9, is that correct?
I will turn to Rick and town administrator to direct us to the right pages. Thank you.
Just maybe to start off on that, I think when we're talking about Public Works, there are several parts in this document or in the binder that are important. One is actually at the beginning, the municipal capital accounts. There are quite a few DPW items in that. There is a capital budget in the binder. A lot of that is DPW related, and then you have the more traditional department-specific budget, which I think you may be right on page 9.
What's the other page then?
Yeah, you got the budget.
So I'm on page, I'm actually in the binder, and I'm happen to be on, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jan, but I'm on the first page of the section called non-recurring capital. Would that be correct?
That could be right, yeah.
Capital improvement, road paving. Would that be it? Curbs and sidewalks? Is that the right kind of stuff?
You have it different.
No? No, that's the capital plan, so I'm wrong.
This is the very beginning.
That's-
the
that's-
second tab.
Yeah, well, I see.
Oh, maybe that's right, yeah. Maybe I'm on the right place.
You're right, that's fine.
Should we be on the capital plan, Jan, or no? Are we on the?
It's up to you. I tried to
You're gonna lead the
address that
discussion,
it's a
so-
little bit confusing, and I tried to address that in my cover letter to the budget, that, you've always had municipal capital, and that included items that this year we presented in a separate capital plan. What's in the capital plan are basically the major non-recurring capital items. What still is on page 1 of the budget document that you've seen under municipal capital are the recurring capital items, all of which are essentially on a payment plan, meaning that, they have been financed, but they're part of the capital overall budget. We just chose at the recommendation of the treasurer to keep those in the old spot. So what you could do is first look at that, but I think you already had some discussion of items that are being financed or on a payment plan, but that's one thing you could do first, and then you could go to the non-recurring ones if you wanted to, the non-recurring capital, and then you would go to that tab, I think.
So, why don't we do that? I believe I have that sheet.
Are we starting in non-recurring capital? Is that where we're starting?
We can do that too.
I just wonder where everybody's at.
I'm gonna let.
That's
I'm
fine.
not gonna, I'm gonna let you drive the conversation.
I'm sorry, well, I shouldn't do that, but
Or what-
I guess if you want to go in strict order, non-recurring is the first thing that shows up in this binder, so you might want to start with that. So you have the list of items, and you see a lot of blank spaces under the town administrator request. I'm talking about page 1 of this budget document, which I think you want to return to every time you have a
Is it
presentation.
dated January 14th?
Correct.
Stamped draft?
Yeah. I mean, that's the main budget document that I think you might want to go
Okay.
to first when you have
It
a
wasn't in the
department.
binder for me anyway, so that's why I'm.
Okay, no, I keep it in my,
Okay, does everyone have it?
so page 1, under municipal capital, you have non-recurring, you need an extra copy?
Nancy's making it one, 100%.
Are you all set or not?
If you have
You
an
know-
extra one, I could use
I
it.
can give you
I
mine.
might be able to put it on the screen actually too. Is this something that you emailed me at one point, Jan? Would this be the one?
We actually had them printed out last week.
You
so
have
I'm not sure
everything.
why.
You should have
we just
everything.
need
Oh, yeah, we emailed it.
It's the document, the Tiverton General Fund Budget FY 2020, January 14th. It's the one that will show, I think he's,
You can start.
I know, this is the budget that we submitted.
Yep.
Okay, the
Go ahead.
budget document, you had a cover letter, you have this document that looks like this, that was dated January 14, and then there was a separate document that is the capital budget. So we start with this document that's dated January 14, which is when we submitted it. On the first page, you have a category of municipal capital. The first subcategory is non-recurring major expenditures. If you go all the way to the right on the town administrator request, it's all blank, because those are the items we move to the capital budget. So we can go there, and if you want to look at that, no. We're on the non-recurring. Can we just hold that, please? So you have a capital budget plan?
Yes.
Okay. The first part of that says capital improvement, and then it's divided in various categories, sort of by topic almost. So transportation infrastructure, there you have they have 2 items that are DPW related. Road paving is one, and the other one is curbing and sidewalks. So the request is to appropriate $450,000 for road paving. That actually is an increase, but not a huge increase over what we currently have in the current fiscal year budget for road paving. And the other thing that needs to be understood there is that it's currently being financed out of that special account that was created, where balances from the budget automatically go into that account. So it's not as if it's all new money. And to some extent, that complicates the discussion, but we're just trying to come up with the budget for what we need, and Rick has provided an analysis of, what is basically on the schedule in terms of which streets and roads would be, or have been prioritized for paving. And then with curbing and sidewalks, I actually added it as a separate category because it tends to fall by the wayside, but we're getting an awful lot of complaints about sidewalks and curbing. And it's not always the town's responsibility, but there are areas where really some restoration or replacement is required. So that's why that is there.
I have a
Would
question.
you be
too.
willing to take questions as we move through?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I think Joe had his hand up first, and then I'm going to,
I have a question too.
sorry.
Starting
On the
right
table?
on with the capital improvements, Bay Street area redemption, what is that?
So Bay Street, I decided was one of those matters that perhaps have not been getting enough attention.
Well, we had a big remediation down there, that's why I'm wondering what's left to remediate, because as far as I know, all the lots were done by the gas company years ago. The restrictions were lifted off.
Well,
of
what
the
I'm
houses.
going to hope will happen is, and I'm trying to arrange for it right now, is with Hoffman Engineering as well as the wastewater district, a presentation on where exactly we are. There was a long, and you probably know a whole lot more about it than I did, although at the time I was actually a DM, had some involvement in it. But there was a lot of back and forth. Finally, quite a bit of remediation was done. The town is responsible for contaminated soil underneath the streets. So that whenever you open up the street, which for example happens when you install a sewer,
Okay.
we're on the hook. And
We
I'm
are the
not,
water department.
no.
You just said they were open up for water and sewer, that's a totally different department.
Well, that's your opinion. In my
Town
opinion,
government.
and based on what I have looked into and what the engineers are telling me, is the understanding is that, if contaminated soils needs to be removed there, the town is responsible. I'm trying to find out more about it. What I don't want to do is just push it away, because the engineers came and talked with me and said, the town needs to become aware there's a potential large liability or exposure there.
Yeah, well,
So
that's
what-
how it all got started to begin with, was they were replacing a water line down there. I'm not sure if it's not done already. Now, if you're talking about houses tying in, I don't know, but we don't have any backup on this, and apparently we haven't had any engineering, so,
Well, there's been actually quite a bit of engineering done by Hoffman Engineering.
all right.
And so what I'm proposing, and what I proposed to the town council as well, is that there is a presentation where we could sort of all refresh our memory as
But how
to,
did we get to pay for it when we had a settlement with the company, and the company paid for all the remediation down there? I don't understand. See, there's something missing here. So we need backup before I can put $250,000 in this slot. All right, we'll leave that one alone. We need more information on that. Preventive maintenance. We started doing crack sealing on the roads that were, to save the roads that were still, in decent shape. I didn't see any money in crack sealing.
it's actually because I specifically, explicitly raised that with Rick, that based on my experience in Warren, if we don't budget for that, we're not protecting the expensive projects that we're doing. And so we should be doing crack sealing on a regular basis. That's included, as far as I know, in this budget.
Under road paving.
Correct.
So it's, all right. The only other thing I want to point out, because you both are new, years past, we worked with the school department so that while we were paving, we could take care of their paving. And they're gonna have some parking lots probably need to be done this year, I'm sure. And also some crack sealing that could save some of the parking lots that are fairly new but starting to spider web. So I'm hoping you can coordinate with the school department on all the paving stuff.
Sometimes you can actually,
We
coordinate
looked
with
at the senior
utilities as
center,
well.
the senior center, there's parts of that are getting real bad.
Right.
So we probably need if possible, to get an estimate there on the, so you can measure the square footage out, get that, maybe get that.
And there's actually some money in here for the senior
Those are the
center.
three things I had as far as the capital.
Middle
The
and high
next
school were
question
due
was the
last year, right?
seawall
Was it-
repair.
Was a question over here, so.
Middle and high school were done last year, were they not?
I'm
The
sorry?
middle and high school were paved last year?
I really can't.
Were
hear
they?
that.
They were. They've all
Yeah.
been redone, correct?
But not all of it.
of them, but I believe we've done everything we're gonna do.
So
Yeah.
what I can say
We'll
is,
shade in the fall, Joe.
There was crack sealing and stuff that on the areas that weren't done, that I was discussing mostly over there.
so what I think we need clarification on as the newbies in the room is, are we paying for school-related paving?
No,
No.
it gets figured in.
I see the coordination, that makes a ton
Yeah.
of sense,
Yeah,
because
for
you
the
can save
bid.
money
No,
that
it's just for
way.
the bid, and then
But do
whatever
they have a
dollar
budget
amount
for
comes
it?
out, they break the bill out, and the school department pays their portion, and the town
Okay.
pays their portion.
We can do that. Yeah, you can
It'd
save
be
money
nice
that
if we
way.
had one building department, but we don't, we
No.
have two.
I know.
The only thing I had was, this, well, that wasn't the only thing, but the seawall.
I
Trying
can,
to figure out where that seawall is.
well, I don't know,
Is it right down between?
are you done with
Riverside,
paving, or?
Riverside.
I know.
I was gonna finish my questions and then go around the room like we had discussed.
Yeah, but we haven't, we're,
So if I could just finish my questions, and the next person can go.
We're just telling you where the seawall is. It's on Riverside.
Okay, where on Riverside?
Where it goes by the tracks.
Okay, let
way
me
down.
explain, again, this is
Rick can-
a new item or a new topic being raised. The seawall is almost like a symbolic thing, because I'm concerned that there may be sections of existing seawalls that are not going to last very long. And therefore, we're going to lose either road infrastructure or even private property.
I'm just
growth.
wondering where they are, though. That's what I'm looking for, so I can go and look and see what you're talking about.
Rick, can you tell him where those are, please? Can you tell Joe where that is, that we saw the seawall?
They're all along the waterfront, is what I'm saying.
I
What
know,
I'm-
but part of that
Only the
road is a
town
state
property.
road.
Can you let me talk?
Well, I don't know if you know that part of that
Fuck
road
you,
is a
man.
state road. Did you know that? Oh, excuse me.
keep your mouth shut for a little bit so I can say something?
You should have had all this in front of us already.
You know what?
This should already been
Just
documented.
looking for trouble, and you're not letting someone speak.
Joe.
Who's here to try and explain what we're putting on the
Jan,
table.
please don't go. Come back.
I
He's
just
just,
asked
he's
where
just
the
asking
seawalls
questions,
were.
please.
I gotta,
Answer
I
the
gotta, all
question.
right, okay, I gotta,
okay.
I
You
gotta,
said it was
all right,
symbolic.
Joe,
Relax.
okay,
Can you stop?
all right, I gotta,
I
I
can
gotta,
get you to stop, otherwise I can't do what I'm
Okay.
supposed to do here.
okay, sorry. I should've stepped in earlier, sorry. Okay, I'm gonna say now, what I wanna do is, what I said earlier, and, I wanna let Rick and Jan go through this, and then we're gonna and then I'd like to ask questions. We've already had a little bit of questioning. I'd like to go through this. I'd like to let them, historically, my memory is we let them present. So I'd like to do that, and be aware of the time, which I again apologize for in the first hour of the meeting. So let's just give them the floor. I'd like to give them the floor for a bit, if that's okay.
So on the item of
Thank you.
the seawall, if that is what you want to talk about now,
Let's just start.
Go through line by line. and
Fine with me.
jot our
Yep.
questions
He just
down
said
and
that. He just said that.
you're still at road paving, you want to ask something about
No,
that?
if we could just
I
go
do
line
have
by
a question
line.
about road paving,
Yeah.
actually. I do have a question, but
I thought-
maybe can I ask a question over it?
Well, I thought we were gonna go around the room. I thought that was the thing.
No, that was when we
I thought
had.
I would be able to ask my questions on this page, and then the next person could ask their questions. If it's too imposing to ask for documentation for things that you're asking for
Joe,
50 and
relax.
70,000
He hasn't even gone through, he hasn't even gone through
I'm
them all.
sorry.
Joe, wait, he hasn't even gone through all his items yet, though.
Joe,
town
I-
administrator.
I think that, wait, I just want to clarify something. My memory is that when we go around the room like that, that is when we have a motion, we need to clarify this. That is when we had a motion and a second, and everyone sort of voices their in the discussion phase. Is that, I understood it to be that. Am I missing something on that?
No,
Or
it's
is that?
also, though, it should also be, look, these guys are here, any department, any town employee is here to present, make a presentation.
Mhm.
let's let them make the
agree.
presentation, the whole thing,
I agree.
soup to nuts.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of that, we're all going to have questions.
That's fine, we can do it that way, sure.
That's when we
I think
work
that's
our
what
way
Joe
around.
said.
Jen, do you have questions? Joe, do you have questions?
Right.
And then we do
That's
this.
fine.
So the chair
Isn't it
said,
easier to
it's
go
all up
page
to you.
by No, it isn't, because it'll
The
take
whole
forever.
thing. No questions till they're done, is what Jeff mentioned, the chair.
Okay.
I hate to say this, but that's hardly what I expected, because we put a document on the table, we're here to answer questions about that document. The question is, what's the most organized way to go
Okay.
about that?
So
And if I
I'm
get
gonna-
interrupted every single time I speak,
Right.
there's nothing I can do here,
Okay.
so I'm going to go home.
So I'm going to ask the question, are there any questions, if that's the method of presentation, are there any questions on road paving? I have a question on road paving. I'm going to go through this thing, and I'm going to ask, are there any questions on every item? Okay, that's what I'm going to do to control this.
But
So-
we're here on DPW, so road
Okay,
paving.
so I have a question about road paving. Jan made a statement that was, this number 450 is not much bigger than it was last year. We know last year there were, and I'm just asking to do the quick math for me, please. The last year there was an amount in the budget, and then there was an amount of residual that came in from that resolution, correct? That comes in. So my question is, how much was the amount in the budget last year?
In the current
to, like,
year.
this 450?
In the current year, I think it's 355,000. I don't remember exactly
335.
Okay.
So the amount that we actually budgeted was 335 the last year, like at the FDR, that amount, before the sweep happened. Correct. Thank you. That was my question. I appreciate people guiding me to that number. So that was my question. Does anyone else have a question on road paving?
That was my same question.
Sherry?
Okay. My question is, and it's really about the whole, it's considered, so under here, we have it as recurring, but it's a 5-year plan. So is this really like money that's gonna recur every 5 years? I mean, for 5 years, is it really like a 10-year, I mean, to continue each year, so not really
Okay, I hope that to some extent what I tried to explain in my cover letter was helpful, because I tried to explain just that. The reason we're doing a 5-year capital plan is that you can see how we try to plan out over, instead of only trying to figure out what can be done in 1 year.
Right, I agree.
You know, how can we spread it out
Right.
in a way that evens everything out, hopefully a little bit. By definition, what we project for future years is less certain than what we know we can and should do in the next fiscal year that we're talking the budget for.
Right.
So, but in that document, you basically see both, but you get a bigger context of, well, is that enough? Or if it's such a big deal, then how we're going to do all that for that money? No, some of these items, you'll see major proposed investments over the next few years. Not that we can make that decision this year necessarily, or you can make that decision this year, but at least we're beginning to get a bigger context.
Well, and then the other question I had was, based on the amount going from such a large amount difference, is our DPW big enough to, like, handle doing that amount of paving? I mean, you know, like, I think they spent like 17,000 or
Sub it out.
something. So, yes, so is that, are we big enough to
Yes.
be able to handle putting that much money into paving?
Yes, we can handle more than that, and there's a need for more than that, but this is what the budget allows at this time. We sub it out, we put it out to bid, open bid in June, maybe it's May, and the low bidder gets the contract for the paving, the reclamation, surface course, binder, the whole package. So we oversee the contractor. This year, it's Cardi Corporation.
Thank you.
I'm gonna try to read grandpa rule. I'm gonna go this way, starting here.
So last year, we combined paving and drainage into one account. So you're splitting out this year again?
No, paving and drainage are still one line item.
Okay, so we have,
Drainage is further down, stormwater and drainage infrastructure.
that's different? That's,
actually also all.
That's draining. so last year, we only did 335,000 for paving and drainage combined. So this year, we're looking at 450 for paving, and 100 for drainage.
Correct.
So would it be like 550?
Oh, they could, okay.
So almost double, not quite double from we did last year. But this, I noticed, also includes specific places where we have drainage issues. And I know there are multiple drainage issues. We've seen them this week with the rain and the freezing. But these are very specific ones, in addition to that town-wide, which would be those ice issues we've had.
I tend to think that stormwater is another area where we have much bigger problems and issues than we have been acknowledging or dealing with. And it's not easy, because if you don't have the money, what are you going to do? Our argument is that there may now be money to do some of that. Just the other day, we had people coming in who live on Pierce Avenue, just beyond where the bridge comes into town, and it's a steep hill, and they just get flooded all the time with water coming down, whether it's from the road infrastructure or something else. But the drainage problems in that area are ridiculous. And, we need to first figure out whose responsibility is, but if the town has some responsibility for making sure we have a reasonable stormwater management system, we need to start working on situations like that. And always try to find out that if we can point the finger to, the Bridge Authority or DOT, we're going to work with them, trying to have them do it. But, there are a lot of areas in town where we have some serious stormwater issues, and they're only getting worse with the type of weather that we're experiencing lately. So that's why, we're suggesting that we start allocating money. And in some instances, it's to really do a study of where are the main problems and come up with a stormwater management plan that prioritizes where you do it, and also tries to figure out how you could do it in the most cost-effective way. So sometimes you see a relatively small proposal for the first year, and then larger amounts coming in the next year. That's based on getting an engineering study done or design study done.
And if I may add, there's two types of drainage. One is integral to the paving, swales, berms, adjusting of the drainage structures that exist. And then the which is part of the paving. And the second is, as Jan mentioned, all the other issues.
And part of that is also, just wanted to mention it, I think we've been used to dealing with serious stormwater issues by finding a way to direct it all to the river. That's not necessarily the right way to do it, or even the legal way to do it anymore. And again, I've flagged that with Rick as well, and we're talking with the people who are writing the stormwater permit for us, saying, what can and can we not do? Because we may actually create more expensive problems by doing it the wrong way. So there's a whole new area sort of opening up where we need to get up to speed with what are the best practices for stormwater management. But it directly affects both public assets and private property.
So this is good. So I think last year we had a presentation. We actually had some photographs that showed us the different streets that are on this priority list. So in the booklet here, it's showing by year for the 5 years which streets are priorities, how much is going to be for each one. So I'm going to assume that the worst are at the top of the list, right, in terms of what we need to get to.
Yes. And this list is modified as time goes on, as when we go out there to pave. So we will be updating it, but this gives us something to start with. This was created maybe a year or two ago, I don't remember.
Right.
Correct. All right. So, and just thinking about what the higher priorities, so I appreciate that. So my questions too were is that we approved in this current fiscal year 335, and then there's some amount that's if we do well, and we don't know if we're there yet. You answered my question about do we have the capacity to do it, and the answer would be yes. And this might be jumping in the order, but is there for the stormwater, those drainage things that Deb had mentioned, kind of adding in? There's a matching in that. Is there any kind of time limit on that? So is that DEM or is that CRMC that wants to have stormwater done
Different
properly?
programs, from the federal EPA to what we hope, Senator Whitehouse has been working on, because a lot of this is climate change related as well. And so we want to be able to have some matching funds in case we are eligible for a grant, so that we can take advantage of it when the timing is right.
Okay.
And, it depends. All these programs have different cycles and different deadlines and what have you. But putting some money in there, and sometimes it's for smaller projects as well, like swales and rain gardens or what have you, that can be sometimes the better solution than these big concrete solutions that cost a lot of money but don't really do anything more than what the softer solutions do.
Thank you.
One other thing about the paving I just wanted to mention is, yes, we try to prioritize as to what are the most serious situations where paving is needed, but then once you know you need to go to that area, if there are maybe somewhat less urgent, but it's right, the street next door, sometimes it's better to do several streets in the same area, so.
Just discussion about main water. So some of the streets that I'm going through the 500 Crown are in the north end. Will they be water and then paved, or will they be paved and then dug back up and repaved?
No, we coordinate with wastewater and the water districts.
But I'm glad you raised that, because and we had that in Warren too, that, we were planning, and then once you start thinking about water, well, what about, when is the gas company planning to upgrade? It's, because if you, unlucky, you do a beautiful paving job and the next year they break it all up again, so it's a very, point very well taken.
Okay. Were you all set, Jen? Okay, great. Justin, you all set, or a question? Okay, Joe?
Just to answer her question, the town regs say 5 years moratorium on a paved road. Can't cut it. Gas company, they have to do all the utility work. If they do have to cut it in emergency, they're required to infrared the road back together, which is a big oven that bakes the surface back together. That's in our town code for people that cut the roads. And it's hard to get them to enforce it unless you get the public works director out there on their butt. Just the only other thing I'll say is, I talked a lot about this already, but on the road paving account, to answer your question, this can be any number that we put in here. So if we can find money further down in the budget to move into capital, into paving, which we should do this year. So this is not a definite number we have to vote on. It's whatever we make this number at the end of the process.
Thank you, Joe. Jay?
I'm good.
Okay, Tom? Ruth?
I don't know if this is the time to ask detailed questions, but I am concerned about some of the paving I've seen done in town where it's just cracking very quickly, or on the edges it's cracking. I know I've been to Canada quite a bit, and they do not have that as much. They just don't. And they have a lot of salt, and I just want to ask that the material that you use, if you could just use the most the most cutting edge. I know that's a detailed thing, but it seems like if you're going to keep having to pave it over and over, right, it just doesn't make sense. That's just something I'm curious about. Do you have any, how do you determine when there's a non-water department area that it needs to be, have a culvert? Have you looked at all the non-water department areas, properties in town to see if any culverts are needed? Have you done that, the same as you have with the water department covered areas, the water department areas?
Okay. To answer your first one, the paving specs, the design is by Rhode Island DOT. So that's what we use. That's what's bid upon, every town in Rhode Island, or every city in Rhode Island. And the culverts are for the drainage, and that is something we're starting. We have historically done some, but this budget addresses the need for more of that, whereas the water departments are a separate entity. They handle just the water, drinking water, not the drainage water.
Okay, I meant the drain, when they have to build a drain, that, like you're talking about, to handle drainage issues.
Right.
Your DPW department, yeah, that's it.
Right.
Right,
Be-
okay.
We would aim to address drainage issues prior to paving if it's within the budget, but many times we simply overlay because to do drainage on a road would possibly double or triple the cost. And there's only X amount of money in it, because to really do drainage, you have to put in a whole substructure, take out and put new gravel in to make the sub-base correct, so you can actually make the paving last. So historically, to get the most bang for your buck, to keep more citizens happy, you either do a reclamation where you grind it up, or you do an overlay on the existing surface.
And then the areas further, let's see, I'm thinking of areas that are, I can just tell you what I'm thinking of since I live on Sapout Avenue, right? They paved it, it's cracking on the sides, it's not staying. And there's also some culverts that would be needed to be added for the drainage, for the flooding to stop getting onto the road. It's a different kind of area than what you're talking about when you drive, the steep roads up in North Tiverton, where there's two different types of problems. Have you looked at everything down in that area too?
No, we haven't looked at everything,
Okay.
but for instance, on Sepauwett, the leg that runs east-west, that's binder. And that's one of the reasons. But again, that's because there's shortages in the bank account, so to speak,
Okay.
over the years. That was done a long time ago, so it is on our list to put the surface course on, because binder does not last as long if there's no surface course on top of it. There are different gradations.
Okay, so you're going to do a better job this next time, you're saying, in general?
Well-
Okay.
Well, everything's within, you have to only be able to use the money that's allocated. So it was chosen a long time ago to do binder on Sepauwett rather than just leave it gravel or let it fall apart.
Okay, so this is one of the reasons for the increase in budget, too, to do these kinds of proper repairs, is what you're saying. Okay, that makes me feel much better. Where are the laws for drainage into the river? Is that a state law? Is it federal law, state law?
Yeah, for some time now, has said that we really shouldn't have direct discharges through the river,
Okay.
especially with runoff from the streets, because it takes pollution.
Well, they do water testing, correct? And do you get the results from that?
We do
everything?
get testing results. That's typically for the beaches, I believe, but, it's clear that we have water quality problems in the rivers as well as in ponds.
Clear because you heard about it?
There, the data out there, yeah.
You saw the data? You saw the data?
Yeah.
Okay.
A lot of work has been done at the state level to actually look
For,
at.
like the septics and all that, too, yeah.
Septic is being considered, and
Drain off.
the runoff
Okay.
is a major issue, yeah.
Okay. And then you're saying that you work with all the other entities, the gas company and the state granting, the state matching and the Fed matching, and you've done all of that. Like, on your list, I would like to see,
I'm not claiming that
Yeah.
we have that all completely figured out, and.
but you're trying.
It's like the best way you could
What was that?
dream of, but it's something we are committed to doing.
Okay.
So the coordination needs to happen, both to make sure that if we can save costs by having someone else do it or doing it together, so that you can get some economy of scale, we're going to do that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, so I just want to ask, just before we go around, just to keep things moving, does anybody have any questions? I'm going to ask generally first on curbing and sidewalks.
Okay,
Okay, so I'm
One-
going to go this way.
Okay.
So, well, I'm supposed to go the other way, actually. Anyone have any questions on curbing and sidewalks? It's your turn.
Great. And just, so with the streets, it's great, there's a 5-year plan identified, and estimates on what it is, scales it up for inflation. Here, you've said, when we replace, here's what it costs per linear foot for spec for a sidewalk. Do you have a sense of where the priorities are? So if the $50,000 were approved for curbing and sidewalks, where we would start July 1st?
Yes, with the amount of money that's in that, you would not have to start July 1st, because it's not it may look like a lot of money, but it's not.
No.
And North Tiverton has substandard sidewalks, and also there's areas that could use sidewalk where people walk, but currently there are no sidewalks. You'll notice, for instance, when they did the new library, they put sidewalk in on that side of the road, so people would be able to walk up to, Guimont Four Corners from the library.
Yeah.
So there's a need for it.
And pardon my ignorance, is the state responsible for any sidewalks, or are those all ours?
That's a big question or a big issue, at least. And I've seen in Warren in particular, where also there are a lot of state roads going through the town, and we had some serious issues with the sidewalks, and I thought, well, that's part of the DOT's job, and it should be in the transportation improvement plan. And sometimes it is, but when you ask them to do something because people have accidents or people are complaining about it, I say, well, actually, the town is responsible for the sidewalks, even along state roads.
Okay.
That's the law,
Okay.
for better or worse.
I think that could be liable for people that have an accident. In other words, if somebody tripped on a bad sidewalk, the town would be sued. Doesn't mean we're responsible to fix them. It means we could be part of a lawsuit, which is why we have insurance through the trust. But it didn't mean that we were responsible to fix state sidewalks. It's still a state issue.
I have to respectfully disagree
Well,
with
we've
that.
never, in this history of this town, did work on state roads, and I don't know any town that does. We do is we go to our representative. If DOT doesn't respond, we go to our representative. We push them to push the DOT to get the issue fixed.
And we're doing that as well.
And that's how
We
you-
always look for ways that even though the state law says that the towns have responsibility to keep the sidewalks clear and safe and repair them if needed as well, we still think there's an opportunity through different means, including talking with our state elected officials, to get DOT to do some of that. Sometimes DOT is open to that, sometimes they don't have room in their plan, but we need to be on them all the time. I totally agree with that. We're not looking to do work that other people should be doing. I just want to make that absolutely clear. That's the last thing we're trying to do.
So I'd like to thank you, Brendan, for starting off that conversation. Bike paths trails is a zero entry, so if nobody objects, I'd like to go over that. Skip that one. Bay Street area remediation, we did touch on that. Does anyone have any questions or further comments on that? I'm going to go this way this time. I don't have any at this moment.
Well, I know Joe's saying that that's a done deal, but that's still on the council agenda every week, so,
You're talking Bay Street?
Bay Street, so we're obviously not done.
And that got skipped, but I was going to say.
And what I want to
Right.
suggest is, because frankly, I have a hard time getting my brains around it, but I would really like to know once and for all what has been done, what still needs to be done, who's responsible for what, and what is the limit of the town's liability and where. And I think a joint presentation by Hoffman Engineering, who has been working in that area on behalf of the town, but also the neighborhood, and the water district to talk about the sewer construction plans will give us a better idea. What is happening in that area is there's a moratorium on septic systems because of the contaminated soil. But, so they can't upgrade their septic systems, but if they want to tie into the sewer, you need a sewer and sewer work. So sooner or later, work has to happen in these streets. And that's where, the question comes up, what's the town responsibility there? What is the cost going to be? I don't have the definitive answer for that. All I know is that there's a potentially very big problem, not based on my opinion, but based on the engineer's opinion.
Jen?
Is there a date set for that presentation?
Not yet. And I would hope it could be sort of a joint to the council as well as the budget committee. It would have to be within the next month or so.
Okay.
Justin? Joe?
Just that, this is not something I believe we need to fund this year. It hasn't even been any engineering. We haven't even had a return. I mean, there was a fund set up to clean that area up. I mean, Tights, a former solicitor, worked on that for years. Again, I thought the majority of that was done, and I thought I guess this is about the new sewer line they want to put in. The water line was already put in. That's how they discovered it to begin with. So if they're talking about, going in and putting in a sewer line, that's just a trench down the road. They'd have to be responsible for that soil. Again, that's a sewer. That's nothing to do with the town. That's a separate entity from the town doing the work in that street. So there's a question there, whether we're even liable. So, I don't know. There's too many. So I don't think we need to have $250,000 in that line item this year, so that's just my thought.
So the sewer is what separate entity?
So the water departments and the sewer department are not owned by the town. They're owned by the people who, pay the rates and paid for the bond and all that.
Although the wastewater district does depend in part on funding from the town, so.
Well, the sewer rates, yeah.
Jay?
So, Jan, did I understand you correctly? The people that live down there, if they want to add a bedroom and need a bigger septic system, they cannot do that?
That's correct.
If they have a failed system, they cannot upgrade it?
That's correct.
In other words, they can be evicted.
Well,
I'm not sure it's all lots either.
they could. I mean, we're all in the same boat in a way. I mean, the state wants a solution because it doesn't only want to tell people that they can't do an upgrade of their septic system because of the contamination. But at the same time, what's the solution here? So then we need to start looking at sewering and who's going to pay for it, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, yeah, I understand what you're saying. I'm just trying to shine a light on one part of the problem.
Right,
If we have residents down there, and
They're in
through no
limbo.
fault of their own,
right.
they have a failed septic system, now they have a very limited time to do something about that, unless they get a waiver.
Yeah,
So
which they
is the
can't.
is the state going to give them waivers because they're kind of a no-win situation?
I think the state is aware of the difficulty and is not going to aggressively enforce, given the lack of options that those folks have. But the state is very eager to have all of us look at the situation and say, okay, how can we get to the real solution here?
Oh, yeah, I agree. We can't it's not a can we're
Right.
going to kick down the road.
Right.
I'm just worried about,
Can I answer his question real quick about the septic systems? Just one second.
Specific, I'll let you speak.
If there's a septic system there, that ground was already dug up, and that soil was already mixed. What's going to happen is, there'll be a waiver, they'll have to have a biologist anyway. All the soil that's taken out will be taken to a dump, like the one in Island Park. The old dump that they're using to fill in with all the contaminated soil, and they'll bring in clean soil in the septic system. The only difference is they have to change the soil. So a couple of 18-wheeler truckloads of soil are going to leave that property, go to a dump, and some fresh soil is going to come in. It's not the gigantic hassle that they make it. It can add probably 10,000 to a septic system, but it can be done. And if it's an emergency, DEM will most certainly is not going to pull their occupancy. They're going to let them do the work. But they got to follow the procedures and have the proper people there to inspect to make sure the job is done correctly and certified. So, as far as the sewer going through there, from what I understand, it's so cost prohibitive that it's not going to happen anyway if you kept up on what's going on down there. It's not about the soil. It's about how much it's going to cost to put the pipe in and how much it's going to cost the people that tie in. If your sewer bill is a mortgage payment, you don't want it anyway. So that's the biggest problem down there. It would sewers in the north end directly. If you pay any attention to that issue, that's been what's went on Robert Gray and up in that area. It's cost prohibitive. So they're better off with a septic system. Sorry.
All set, Jay?
yeah.
Okay, Tom? Okay, Ruth?
I just need a little background on the Bay Street remediation. This was the soil contamination was from way before, and they fixed it, right?
It was a gasification plant where
Okay.
they took coal and turned it into natural gas. It's all the waste
Okay.
buried there.
And at that time, you said the water lines were fixed, right?
The new water line went
Okay.
through, that's how they
Okay.
discovered it.
Okay, that's how they discovered it, okay. And now, who wants the new sewer lines? Who is desiring this? Who is deciding to do this?
The sewer district,
They want to do it, okay.
it's on their plan.
Do the residents want it?
Well, that's a tough question to ask, I think, because they're between, yes, I think they would probably prefer to be on a sewer as long as they don't have to pay for it, because it's an expensive proposition.
Can anybody give me an idea of a sewer
In that
bill?
area, the problem is, it's not as if we can sit here and say, is it a good idea to continue with septic systems or go to sewer? Given the situation, septic systems are no longer the solution in that area.
Is it because it's steep there, or is it, what's the reason?
Because it's contaminated.
Contaminated.
And if it,
Wait, it's still contaminated. Have you seen tests?
well, septic systems by definition discharge to the ground.
Right, but it
So
goes
the-
back
the
to normal.
polluted
normal-
water from a septic system ultimately ends up into more polluted soil, even if you replace the soil in the immediate location.
The new septics.
And that's why it's not,
No, the new septics make it so there's no environmental damage, absolutely. The newer ones that are required,
no.
They're above the water
That's-
table.
above the water
And I
table.
think they use galleys down.
Well,
there
if you know, I'm sorry,
No,
I'm not going to debate, whether or not
Okay.
you
No, I
need
know.
septic
That's
systems
what I
or
thought.
not. That's not what
The
we can
question is,
decide here.
Have you seen any recent results from contamination? Like, I want to know if you have the results from the engineers on the contamination levels.
Yes, they came and talked to me last year, and I was pretty overwhelmed by the
Okay.
wealth of information that they had. They have some maps showing, which areas have been dealt with, which areas are sort of midway or not sure yet what's going to happen there. And then big decisions have to be made about the sewering, for example. Is it going to go or not? If it's not going to go, then what's going to happen with, septic systems needing upgrades? Because septic systems, by definition, it's not accurate to say that you have septic systems that have zero environmental impact. That's simply not accurate. You have septic systems that significantly reduce the discharge of pollutants to groundwater or to soils, which is a great thing. And it would certainly be better than what we have there right now. But it's not necessarily going to get approved. There's a reason for there being a moratorium on septic system replacement and new septic systems.
Thank you.
So, I'm looking at the next item, which is seawall repair. And I'm going to defer to keep things moving. My question on this, I'm going to go this way this time. Does anyone have any questions on this? If you don't, then we'll just move right past you.
If I may just finish what I had started to say when we got to this topic.
Sure, I'll let you start.
The reason this is on here and why seawall is not necessarily descriptive of the whole problem. The larger problem is our waterfront areas and the vulnerability to what's happening with, rising water is one, and more frequent and more severe storms. So you get the action of the waves and everything else. So I don't know if you've seen it, but I see it all the time, erosion. The most obvious location, I think, is along Riverside Drive, where you see sort of the riprap being, torn up, parts of the road beginning to fall into the side and into the water. And so there's no doubt in my mind that we're seeing effects of, sea level rise, but also those major storms that we're getting. And the question is, how vulnerable are the public assets, like the roadways? How vulnerable are commercial and private properties as well? And who ultimately should be getting their arms around what needs to be done to protect property or to have a long-term strategy of what you do? If this is all going to go underwater at the end of the century, then, what are you going to invest in? So it requires some policy making as well. Part of the problem is that you have infrastructure that is going to get damaged, if not destroyed, if we don't do something. So, for example, the situation at Riverside Drive. I have sometimes looked at areas where you have the commercial establishments along the waterfront here, and it doesn't look to me that it's always in very good shape. The seawall, generally speaking, is okay, but there are areas where it's not okay. The breaches, they're, where it could easily fail in the case of a large storm with a large flood situation. And so I believe it's absolutely necessary for us, and this is being found in most coastal communities, that we need to get a handle on what are the vulnerabilities, who can help in terms of money. And again, we have a congressional delegation that can be helpful with that because they do recognize the problem. How can we get more help from the state doing this kind of an analysis? Both to be more proactive, but also to start responding to things that are happening right now already. Because you talked about, roads deteriorating. In coastal areas, they can deteriorate because of situations like this. So sometimes it's like patching up or replacing or raising a seawall perhaps. In other places, it may actually be, should we try to preserve an amount of land that can absorb the floodwaters, which actually would be a cheaper solution and ultimately a more sustainable one. But some study needs to be done, which is why we propose in the first instance to put money aside for a study to be done. And hopefully we can work with the universities because they have some very good programs with CRMC so that we don't have to pay, the standard consultant rate for doing all these studies. But I believe it's something that really needs to be done, that we cannot ignore any longer.
Okay, I'm gonna go over my turn this way. Anyone have any questions on this item?
The only thing that I would like to say is that I hope that you guys would, I agree, the study would need to be done, but that you'd realize that the businesses that are along that would be responsible for, their flood insurance or their property, it's the wall that's under their property, obviously. Because some of them chose to build on the water, or to have their business on the water. So hopefully they would also be partly responsible for at least their part, And that's all. I just wanted to say that.
So just quickly, that line item is for the study of, all seawall in Tiverton?
It's really more, the seawall is one just example of, we need to look at, where's the seawall in fine shape, we don't have to worry about it. What are projections for major storm events? Is it good enough to handle those? If there are weak spots or breaches or areas where, the gap needs to be filled in, where are they? How much would it cost to do that? So we get a better idea. But it's infrastructure all along, and it can be some of the wharfs, some of the ramps that you have.
So at the end of, this payment, we would have an idea, we could develop a plan?
I would hope so, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And frankly, I think, it's my own opinion, the state should have done this some time ago, because it's a small state. It would make more sense to do it all statewide, but it's not happening, so.
Brendan, any questions on this?
No, but to be clear, as we're looking for the seawall line item for fiscal year 20, you have backup here. It's the Poplar Drive, Riverside area that equals 50 grand. This is the backup to show how that $50,000 would be spent.
Right. It simply goes in line with all the things that Jan had said. It shows you it's an order of magnitude, and it shows you where you can start, but it shows you that how quickly you can go through that, but there's only X amount of money that's going to be available. But you'll be able to see by that example what you would be able to repair for that cost, whether it's 50, 100, it's broken down by the foot, and then it gives you a total.
Right, but to me, there's one thing, there's a bunch of things to say, hey, we can estimate how much it's gonna cost to do per linear foot, to put drains in generally, and all, and that's very helpful, right? And then the second stage is to say, where do we wanna do it? And you have both of those here, so if we come and we say, hey, this Riverside Drive, the land that we're talking about is town-controlled, correct? This is not an instance where there are businesses and we're gonna go in and put it, this is something that's our own. So I understand the point that Sherry's making, but this isn't something where we're gonna help Quality Yachts or the Tiverton Yacht Club or someone else who's a private property owner. This is a road, and on the west side where the water is, we're responsible. Is that correct? Okay.
So I just want to I just want to note in the record that Sherry was going to leave the meeting. I think she's a little under the weather at the moment, at what this clock reads at 9:05. And I just wanted to, Tom, could you take the notes, take over for that, for the next, for the remainder of the meeting? Thank you so much. Tom? Okay, sorry for interrupting. So,
That's good. No,
Brandon,
thank you. That's
Nick, anyone else? Good questions on this?
Deb, you asked the question one of the questions I was wondering about, but just a comment, between Grinnell Beach and Coastal Roasters, there's a seawall, and there are a couple of large
Right.
stones. Right, you know about it.
Yep.
That's it, just a comment. Glad you know about it.
Have other communities done, are they starting to do, or has anyone completed one of these studies? Has anybody brought a plan to the state to kind of already understand what path we might be able to be on?
There are several communities that have looked at what we call the vulnerabilities in light of sea level rise and storms that we're already experiencing. One is North Kingstown, in particular Wickford, where the parking lots routinely are underwater, things like that, and what can be done about that. Newport has done a study. They've worked with URI in both cases. I think Cranston has done it. I think Warwick is working on it. There are several communities that are doing this. And what I hope we can do here is sort of not reinvent the wheel. If they already done sort of the more general analysis, we can probably use that. But here, start focusing on areas where we really should be doing something right now to stop it from getting worse. And at the same time, get a better handle on, over the next 10, 20 years, where are the problems going to be, and is there a way for us to prepare for that? Well, and I was very active in that, actually. There is a lot of work being done. There is a climate change council that tries to do that. For some reason, we have not been able to convince the state to just say, why don't we just allocate money so that we can do the whole state and just start looking at waterfront infrastructure and where the biggest needs are. So that hasn't happened yet. But there is awareness at the state. Certainly DEM is aware of it. Statewide planning is aware of it. DOT is very aware of it. Utility companies are very aware of it because their utilities are going to be underwater if we don't do something. So.
My last part of this question is, we talk about town, talk about state. Are there other states that have already put plans in place, any payment structures?
There are certain states in the Mid-Atlantic region in particular where quite a bit of work has been done. And the other good thing we have here in Rhode Island is actually CRMC, which really is ahead of the curve on this. But again, it's sort of a voice in the wilderness sometime. But the other good thing about that is that they are constantly in touch with what's happening elsewhere in other states. You're totally right. We don't have to start from scratch. A lot of the work has been done, but now you need to apply it to particular locations.
Justin McBride, anything?
Took the words right out of my mouth.
Okay. Joe?
I'm still trying to approximate where, this is where, you're talking about where you go through the railroad, where the railroad bridge was. In that area. Now, the first thing you go across is the bridge where it's just steel plates.
Right.
And how far beyond are you talking about where all the riprap is needed?
It's the, is it still Riverside Ave, or, yeah, going all the way to where?
So it's way up at the end,
Right.
almost.
There's
where
one area where you
It's like the
can
dirt
see
road.
actually erosion happening.
All
There's a
right.
boat club.
And, no.
Well, no, that road doesn't go all the way through. Well,
No, it
years
doesn't go
past,
through. It
years
used to.
past. Years past, we took a couple of truckloads of stone up there because the rain had washed off the edge of the road, and they took the dozer and just spread it out. That's how we've always fixed that road, and it didn't cost anywhere near $34,000 for 2 truckloads of, I mean, they put a truckload of stone and then a load of crush and run, because it's really not even a through road. It's not even a used road. It's,
I agree that, and we're not proposing that we're actually going to repair all the riprap along Riverside Drive. What we're saying is we need to look at it And the town will actually need to make up its mind whether it wants to preserve that road or not.
All right, I was just looking
Because
at
if we
the
don't do
estimate.
anything, it won't be there.
I was just looking at the estimate, and the estimate came down to $34,160. And I'm just saying, in the past, that we fixed it with 2 loads
What page is that, Joe?
of material, and a bulldozer went over there and graded the road again. Does it like every time we had a huge storm in the past, that's all we've done. I mean, Public Works has been very busy now, I understand, doing, building parks and stuff, but,
And, yes, Joe, thank you for your comments, I understand what you're saying. This gives you an idea, this is one example. There's coastline, of course, all the way up and down Tiverton. Some of it is state, some of it is individual, and some of it is town. It shows you an example of what's involved to repair that. Once that washes away, you cannot replace it. So it shows you the riprap, it shows you the pavement, and it shows you the drainage. Because it's not, in that area, it's not only the river and the bay that's doing some washout. Some of it is the drainage coming from the east. So it's an example showing you what it cost and what you're looking at down the road. You certainly can dump a few loads of rock in there, riprap,
what
but
we've
it
been
doesn't
doing.
solve the problem long-term.
no. Then again, it's not even a used road. It's just like people might drive down there if they're gonna fish or something. It's not a through road. So that's my only point. All right, that's my only point on that. It just, lost my train of thought, I'm sorry. Oh yeah, the culvert. All right, when you first go in, that steel bridge, all right, Joe Farias, Public Works Director, almost 20 years ago now, had originally put up a plan to put, I think, 3 24-inch pipes under there and then repave over it. He came up with a plan. He had a little cement on either end to hold the pipes in place. It was a pretty simple fix that he had came up with to fix that. And he estimated a crew for a day over there to fix that, so that's the only reason I'm kind of questioning some of the costs, because a lot of the stuff we had already figured out in-house to do it. It was just a matter of getting the guys there. I mean, we even had the pipe and everything. It was just time. So many other projects went ahead of it. That's why those steel plates been over there for almost 2 decades.
All right, and thank you, Joe, for your comments. On that culvert, you also have a little bit of wall on the west side, both on the south side of the stream and the north side. And this would have to be designed. You wouldn't get a permit from CRMC simply to put a couple of pipes in there without showing some kind of detail. And also, the culvert is the way to go, not just pipe, because a culvert is a square entity versus pipe where gravel could wash out. A pipe could be a quick fix, but it would not be a good long-term fix. And the steel pipe, the steel plates that are on it now are not a long-term fix either.
They've been there 20 years.
If I may, one other thing on this. This is a good example of another thing we've tried to do with the capital plan. Certainly, we could have put it on for FY '20 to do that culvert, and it was more or less the plan, because people have been waiting for something to get done in that area. But we also looked at, what else is in this capital plan proposal, and how much money may there be available if we think about casino money or not, which I know is a controversial issue. But I then decided, well, I should ask Rick, does it have to be done in FY '20? Because if not, it might be better to put it, push it back a year or even 2 years. And so he said, well, it can wait. It cannot wait forever. We need to put it in the 5-year plan, but it doesn't have to be necessarily this year. So it's one example of how you can, in a 5-year plan, start shifting things around so that hopefully it doesn't all happen in 1 year and then we're bankrupt.
Well, only that, you're saying that, I'm not sure that coastal, I'm not sure that it's within the 200 feet. I'm not sure coastal was involved in that. DEM probably, because water flows that, but that doesn't stay wet. That's not a river. It's only wet, it's rainwater. There's a lot of time when that's dry, so it doesn't come in It's a little different than like a river.
No, and thank you, Joe. Anything within 200 feet
Yeah.
is CRMC.
Is it within 200 feet? I'm not
Yes,
sure.
yes.
It is?
Yeah, yes, it is. Thank you.
Jay?
Oh, well, okay, I think it's one point Jan made, and I think it's important to note. Studies have to be done, and then decisions have to be made. We'll take Riverside Drive. Do we want to save it or not? Personally, I don't think we should, because it's only 8 feet wide. You can't go inland anymore with it. If the water comes up a foot, it's flooded, and we'll just keep on building it up. What are you going to do, add 10 feet of stone to Riverside Drive just to keep it? It's like Joe said, nobody uses it. There's other ways to get to those houses. But there are plenty of other places in town that don't have that problem, but do have flooding problems, and they need to be addressed. So Riverside Drive may be the worst one in Tiverton, but there are other ones that are probably worth saving.
Can I ask a question? So we've already done the site visit to Riverside Drive, and I understand there is different access to some of the homes, but there was one home that we parked at, and there's no other access for them to, they're right at the place, there's no other access for them to get home. Is that correct? And are there other homes along there that do not have access outside of that road? The ones that, I'm talking about the ones that are on the water side. How else would they do it without accessing Riverside Drive?
Well, I wasn't talking about them.
No, I was just asking, like, if
I was
you
talking
did
about,
it-
where,
The
you know where that one
north-
car, where we all pulled up and backed
Yeah,
up
where-
from
Yeah,
that's what he's-
there
yeah, that's what he's talking
But the other
down,
side would have to be done where the
looks
house is.
useless.
Yeah.
Can I just, I want to try to make a point here. This is ultimately going to be a bigger policy issue that I think is beyond DPW director, town administrator, budget committee. This is a community decision as to what do you want to do with which waterfront areas, given the fact that there is a threat to those areas. What are the priorities? Where can you do something cost effectively? Where do you maybe need to consider what they call retreat? Let it go. That's hugely controversial, because the people who live there may have a very different opinion of the people who live on the other side of Tiverton. So it's just not something we're going to resolve here, but we do need to get a handle on it.
Just, she had mentioned the wall. A car hit that wall that knocked on Main Road that you mentioned, where across from the church, the car went. I was going to say, a car went over the wall there and knocked those blocks out. And the state was already, with the insurance paid. What's happened is the state just hasn't fixed it. It's kind of like if we don't have Brett Pelletier chasing them around, they don't do it. Stone Bridge, for instance, it's. Yeah, well, I'm just, for example, that wall, where it gets broke and stuff, that's actually a state wall anyway, but when it was damaged, they still haven't fixed it in years now.
Tom, questions?
Yeah, it sounds like we need a plan for a plan. Plan could be very complicated, or it could not be. It could be a framework that you start filling in over the years. But it sounds like there's a way, at least you can talk to some other town administrators and with the idea of getting connected to URI and trying to get a cost-effective study.
And there's quite a bit of assistance available directly from CRMC, but also from this Coastal Resources Center at URI that has been working with several communities. So we want to get on the waiting list, so to speak, and have them do a lot of the work for us because they get funding for it, so.
I just want to say I commend you on taking this up as an important item. It really is. We're a coastal town, it's a coastal state, and it's good what you're doing with the reps, as long as you follow through with the reps, and the university is great, URI, it's very marine-oriented, and other towns. I would really like to know, even if I have to email you later, what the other towns have been doing, and are there any state laws, any laws pertinent to this? I just want to know what all the laws would be. And I like that people mention the difference between state land, town land, and private land. That's, it is true. When you buy a property on the water, you're the one who's got to do the seawalls, and I've seen them do it, the private owners. I think that was it. Thank you very much.
Okay, so I'm going to skip over docks and ramps, so it doesn't look like there's any appropriation scheduled for this coming year. Do I have that right? I think I do. So I'd like to move down to the next appropriation, which would be town-wide improvements for stormwater drainage. I think we touched on this already. I'm going to, again, pass on my opportunity to keep things moving. Just anyone on, I'll just go this way. This time, anyone on this side of the table? Got a question?
What is this one, town-wide improvements?
Yeah, the 35,000. This way, anyone?
We'll have to wait till they present it.
Situations that come up, some of them we already have. I just talked about where Pierce Avenue is. It's one of those situations that they may, I understand that not too many years ago, there was a huge issue there with stormwater and the ground caving in and it threatening some private property. So when that happens, you need to be able to do things. Ideally, you get ahead of the curve on that, but we do have those situations where all of a sudden stormwater has caused a serious problem and we need to step in. So that's basically what it is.
I actually have one question.
Ruth does have a question.
And I'm apologizing because of my last item. I meant to ask, in the comprehensive town plan, is there anything on seawall maintenance, anything to do with the coastal issue, that issue? In the comprehensive town plan that they've drawn up, the town council, I believe?
There is a recognition of, that there is a problem, there is a threat, and then there's a hazard mitigation plan that I think could and should be more specific about this.
And then I'm going to skip the next and pass on this one.
Anyone, any questions this way on this storm drainage infrastructure, town-wide improvements? Any questions going this way?
I'm just not clear on the townwide improvements. It's an allocation, or do you have a plan?
No, there's not a plan, but this is one of the reasons why I asked for a meeting with ESS Consulting, which does our stormwater permitting every year, and I wanted to know what this actually accomplishes, because I would like to know whether an analysis has been done of where the stormwater issues are, whether under state law and regulation we have to have a plan for that, which is my understanding, and whether that plan has been developed as part of the permit or still needs to be developed. So basically, I'm asking the same question.
Okay, thank you.
But there is an allocation, there is a backup data in here showing what it takes to do X amount of feet.
Yes, I saw that, yeah, thank you.
Going this way, Jay? All set?
No.
Question then?
Good.
You're all set. Joe?
Only that it seems like this should be in the contingency fund, the council contingency fund. If there's an emergency, that's where the money comes from. So, it just seems to me that's where that money should be.
Well, you want to address it
When the
before
road
it's an
blew out
emergency.
on Robert Gray, they went to the contingency fund to pave, so, to fix it. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
So that's your emergency fund in town. It's controlled by the council.
Thank you, Joe.
Would you like these addressed as you go, Jeff, or no?
Sure, you can address that.
Just a comment, with stormwater management, you don't want it to get to be an emergency. You want to proactively address the issue if you can.
Why is that?
Well, for instance, you take a look at Robert Gray or Hancock, different streets like that where the drainage becomes a water runoff and it freezes and it becomes unsafe to pass on the road. So all these issues, plus you want to address it prior to any direct runoff going into a body of water such as the river or the bay or a pond.
So is it twofold that you, preventing further risk down the road, and then it's cheaper to repair before considering?
I think that's a big item. The longer you wait, the more expensive you're likely to have a project more expensive.
The prices, okay. Interesting, thank you.
If I could, just 1 second. In the past, when we've had emergencies in town, the Public Works responded. I remember one time we had, I don't know, he's a member of the school committee. The water came down the road, washed his whole deck out underneath his deck. and we had to go down there and make an emergency repair and lend him a little hand before his deck fell over. We filled it in for him. Public Works went and did the work. That went to the council in the next meeting paid the bill. That's the way it works. So they're not inhibited from going to do an emergency repair just because this money wouldn't be in the budget. The administrator would direct him immediately to make the repair. You pay the bill later. So, again, this is money that would be in a contingency fund for emergencies. And it's, like I said, it's up to the administrator to call what the response is. He runs the town day to day.
Maybe Joe, questions on this?
I mean, I kind of, I see Joe's point, but I also see the point of being able to get ahead of an issue before we're having to tap into the contingency fund, as long as there's a plan for that money. I mean, having the money sitting there with no plan is essentially another contingency fund. So townwide improvements is very, very general, but if there was a plan in place as to, okay, what are the needs, what are the most vulnerable areas, what are we doing, what are we allocating there to fix it, to avoid having to go to the council for contingency funds and pulling all that money out. Yeah, I guess I'd just like to see it a little more detailed, but I know it's not in this, so.
If I'm not mistaken, DPW, gets to deal with drainage issues throughout the year, every single year. And the question is whether we can get a better handle on it from a budgeting perspective. Waiting until it happens and then doing it as a contingency, in my mind, is not the proper way to deal with the issues when you know that you have issues and you know they're getting worse. I look at the roads here and people discharging from their properties, water onto the road, freezes up. Next thing is the road is breaking up. It's that kind of thing. It's happening. Now, what can be done to prevent it from happening? That will save us ultimately money. And I think the more proactive we are, the more money we actually save.
Thank you. Think we're going around? We're all good? Okay. So the next one is matching grant funds. Oh, I guess we have to allocate some money for. This would be, maybe Jan or Rick could just explain what grants are matching or what's the purpose of this. Do we have active grants out there we need $25,000 for, or is this because we're going to file some grants that we're going to identify?
Oh, for the matching grants?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I know that, DM has stormwater grants that we may want to get access to, but they're always matching grants. EPA has the same thing. So, and these are, basically when you do stormwater projects, they tend to be much more expensive than this. On the other hand, you can also do smaller things, like when we talk about swales, those are a lot less costly, but you still need money to do it and to do it right. So we could come up with, say, what's called green infrastructure plan for a particularly vulnerable part of the community and go for a grant to address that area and then have the matching funds to be able to do that.
Thank you, Jan. Any questions on that?
Only to say that I do agree with having that grant fund for the very reason that if you have a project that's shovel-ready, you can always, try to get DEM or Clean Water. There's so many organizations out there available, and we have a planner who can do that work, so we might get some money out of that. Sometimes it'll pay.
Joe, I just made a note you support the grant. Sorry.
Well, it's not all bad.
Okay, no other points on the grant? Okay. So, next items are waste management infrastructure. So, this is a topic. Landfill closure testing engineering and transfer station recycling center study plan. So these are, they're in the right order. So, I'm gonna go use the restroom. I think that what we should do is, I'm assuming there's gonna be questions on this. Why don't we ask Jan and Rick to speak to maybe as briefly as you can, to the first one, where we're at with the closure, I know there's gonna be a round of questions. If I'm not back, we go which way this time? Someone start. Pick a direction. Okay. You're up,
Okay, so landfill closure, this particular amount of money is because it may be needed to do engineering work that had not previously been anticipated. There is a closure plan. We're still waiting for DEM to finish its review and approve it. But while that's happening, DEM also slapped us with a non-compliance letter about stormwater. And we started saying, now, wait a minute, the closure plan is one way to actually deal with stormwater issues with that landfill. Because if you're concerned about polluted runoff from the landfill, then let's do the closure plan as quickly as possible, and that addresses it. So can we integrate these two things? Because of course, they're two separate divisions as DEM that don't talk to each other. So now that's happening. We actually got some feedback that perhaps we should consider changing the closure plan a little bit, where you have an area in the landfill area that if you leave it alone, because it's very vegetated right now, it's actually a really good area to receive stormwater. So instead of capping it, which means more water runs actually off, you would let it infiltrate in an area where that wouldn't cause any problems. So that needs to be analyzed and engineered to see if that actually is feasible. We're not sure that is going to happen because DEM needs to sign off on it. But if it happens, this is the estimate of what the additional engineering cost would be. And so I have also said that this whole line item of landfill closure is obviously a much bigger line item, and there is a special fund. The fund is less than what the most recent estimate of the closure cost is, which is now around $10 million. But even so, there's a significant fund that has been established, and we're getting closer to that. That's a whole other thing that at some point I would like to integrate into the capital plan and indicate how much of that is already funded versus what we will need to find still to add to that. So that's not even in here yet. This is to help us finalize, hopefully, a real closure plan and then get going with the closure sooner rather than later. I know there's still discussion of whether we should try to extend the life of our landfill. I am 99.9% convinced that that is absolutely not going to happen.
Are you going this way, Jim?
So, that was the first item. Any questions going that way?
Justin, go.
I'm okay.
I thought we had paid PAR Engineering to already do a transfer station plan.
This is the second item, the transfer station item.
I think they did the plan to show the area.
Right.
That it
So-
would be, and we kind of looked at it, and it was like, whoa. And then Kim
This is
came,
different, Joe.
Hold on, Joe. I don't want to, you're on the second item, the transfer station?
well,
I just want to do them in order.
We're still in landfill closure.
I'm still on the first item, landfill closure testing, and I did have a question on that.
well, I had one on that one, too.
Well, ask that
but-
question.
Well,
please.
only that, are we still drilling up there? Are we still drilling holes for wells? What's the engineering for? Is that what you were talking about, the relocation of a retention pond? Because already, as you said in the plan, it was what, the north side was going to be the retention pond down. Is that what they're saying, to still move the water to that area, or?
There's some, I believe, concerns with one of the retention ponds, but those, I think, would remain. In addition to that, there would be a change to how much capping you would actually do, and instead using an existing vegetated area to absorb stormwater, which would solve a couple of problems at once. So that is being looked at, and we need to get a sense from DEM. Actually, DEM suggested it to us, one part of DEM, and the other part of DEM is not sure about it. So we're trying to get, guidance, but it looks as if this is something worth looking into, and PAR will be looking into that. This is in addition to its existing contract, on the closure plan and developing construction documents. The second item is for the transfer station. And you in particular have mentioned that we need to get serious about figuring out what we're going to do with that building. In the first instance, we need to make sure that we know whether the building can be salvaged or upgraded so that it can serve us for a longer period of time, whether it's worth it, or whether we should think about replacing it and building a new.
What building is this,
This
John?
is the DPW building. Actually, I'm sorry, I'm mixing it up. That's the DPW building. That comes under town buildings. I'm sorry, I mixed that up.
That's okay. That's okay.
Yeah, I'm
It's
glad
like-
you caught me. So on the transfer station, same urgency, though, that Joe had raised earlier, that we need to make up our minds, whether we're going to have a transfer station, if so, where can it be located, and how we're going to pay for it. And it's true that PAR did preliminary, or just a study, a few years ago, analyzing sort of the cost and benefits of having our own transfer station versus trucking waste directly to the landfill. And if I'm not mistaken, the conclusion was, although they left it up in the air, I believe, but the town decided that based on that study, I'm not sure a decision was actually be made, but I think it was leaning towards it's very expensive to truck the waste every day to the landfill, multiple trips, et cetera, and it would be better to have a transfer station where you can compact it and then, have fewer trips to the landfill. That, I will say, I read the study, and I think PAR will be the first to recognize that it's completely outdated. In part only because when you do the financial analysis, you make certain assumptions about what the tipping fees are at the landfill. Well, there are a lot more by now, a lot more. So the economics, change as well, and we need to take a good look at that. But we also need to have a better idea of, if we do a transfer station, what is actually the cost going to be? Where would it be? They did some preliminary analysis of that, but it's not, I think, nearly enough. We also need to decide whether we're going to have, instead of only a transfer station for the municipal waste, should that be combined with a recycling center, or do we continue with the recyclables being trucked out to the landfill as we currently do? So some work needs to be done to actually get a handle on how we're going to do this long-term, based on the current economic situation, the current situation with the state Rhode Island Resource Recovery and what it charges and everything else.
Just say, are we doing transfer station now? We're there?
I had one question on the landfill, though, before we move to it, so I just didn't get my question off. One question is just, I noticed that there's an account item, it says landfill closure testing engineering, 50,000, and it looks like was it last year's budget, we had 50,000 as well? Well, I'm looking, it says engineering testing permits, is that the same line item?
No.
Okay,
Actually, I
that's the
think
actual permits?
that's for permitting, and it's for ongoing environmental monitoring at the landfill.
Okay, so my question is, and it's just a comment or question, can either one of these, if that one lives on as well, is there any, from your perspective, Jan, any rumbling or anything about paying for these from the landfill closure account? I think we go through this discussion every once in a while, because these would be like, wouldn't these be valid expenses? And I'm not suggesting we do it, but the landfill closure account from the garbage bags, that account, can't you use it for things like this? And I'm not suggesting we do, but.
I think the argument could be made that you could use it, it just means you have less money for.
So you haven't heard any rumblings
the
though on your
actual
end from
closure.
council to do that?
No, no, not
Okay,
yet.
I just want to
Not
ask
yet.
the question. Okay, I'm done. So, go ahead, Jan, you have the floor on the transfer station, right? That's where we're at now?
Yeah, so there again, the 50,000 is not to redo the whole study, but rather to update the study that PAR Engineering had done. I honestly have a hard time estimating these things, so I have to just guess at what it might cost, but we talked about it, and we talked about it with PAR, I believe, and they gave us this estimate.
Would PAR do their work on their own study?
That would be my recommendation, because they're the most familiar with the site. And just so that you know, because there is a legitimate concern with, do they have a monopoly on all the landfill work? We're going to go out, for a new contract once we have the closure plan approved and the construction documents. Then it goes out to a contract to do the actual closure construction work.
I You said something a minute ago. I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt your presentation. Okay, so you said something a minute ago, and two things. First of all, if PAR wrote the plan, PAR says it's outdated, and PAR is going to get the 50 grand to redo it, I just red flag to me, but that's just a comment. Second thing is that you mentioned something a minute ago about the tipping fees increased, and I just wonder if we had a list of the variables in the report that changed, and if we knew that, these 2 or 3 variables increased, we may be able to just look at the report, just and know right off the bat, okay, because of the nature of the mathematics, that the problem got worse or the problem got better. You know what I mean? Looking at if all the math is monotonically increasing versus decreasing, that's all I'm saying. So if the tipping fees increased, and if you're trucking up, it may not, but it's tipping fee has a curve, obviously, per load. Maybe you make out with a bigger load is less, that's all I'm saying. Just look at if they're monotonic, how the curves work. That was just a comment I had from the report, and maybe there's a way to not have to do a whole lot of work on the report by being smart and just looking at the nature of the curves and the new fees. That's all. Just a comment.
So we had a plan, that plan.
Study.
Where are we at? Why are we spending this?
I think we are. Yeah. Thank you for bringing it up so clearly.
Do we have some more explanation on why?
I'm sorry, hogging the microphone.
No, not at all. The plan was 2011, and it addressed a lot of variables that are not necessarily the same at all, not just the cost, but regulations have changed. The towns where they did some comparisons have changed on what they do. So yes, the tipping fees have increased dramatically. However, there's a lot of other issues on that. It was a long report addressing a lot of different items. So you're not going to be able to realistically just plug it. I understand what you're saying, Jeff, and you will be able to do some plugging in of some items, but an overall study has to be done. For instance, I doubt now they would even allow the transfer station to be put at the landfill. So that probably has changed. And what you want to do even at the DPW garage, that site has changed based on industrial park growth. So there's a need for an overall study of different locations if a transfer station is going to be seriously pursued. And you have to study the land, you have to look at it. So it's a little broader than just being able to change a few numbers on this report.
My impression was,
I'm not trying
I
to
think
get
that-
caught, but I'm like, if we already spent 50,000, why are we spending another 50,000?
Right.
It's a lot of money.
I'm waiting to speak.
What was the
I can answer your questions, but I'll let them.
That was about 8 years ago.
When it was done, what was the date that
The landfill was going to be closed in 2018, or 2017 back then.
So we're perfect. We're very close.
We've extended it.
We're in 2019 right now. Right for the change.
well, we can, the thing
Send the bill
is,
to
we're
the
not the
state.
experts either. I think they're good questions. My personal impression from reading the report was that it was pretty general and preliminary, and also based on facts that since have changed. And so it certainly needs to be updated. I was the first one to say, well, we don't need a whole new study, but we do need to do another study. And in addition to, just the analysis, the financial analysis, we need, I think, a more definitive study of sites and what it will cost to build at the different locations, because that was really, truly preliminary, I think.
I don't know what the original cost was of that plan. That was, as I mentioned, about 8 years ago. So I don't know if it was 50,000 back then or not.
It was up there. I think it's like over 60.
We're in the wrong business, Jennifer. Okay. I asked my question. Anyone else have questions about?
Which direction are we going?
I don't know.
Thought we were
Where
going
do we
this
start?
way.
Did I asked a question, so
We were going this way or this
which
way?
way are we going? Whose turn? Which way do we go? Help me
Doesn't matter,
out.
I'm done.
I'm getting dizzy.
All right, well, then I'll,
Go ahead, Jay. You're up.
so
You're doing good.
You're gonna go, all right, is it me or him?
I used to work in an industry where tipping fees were
Yeah.
talked about every day.
Okay,
So to answer your question.
that's what happened to you.
What typically happens is a town negotiates with a dump or whoever, and tipping fees are discussed. Tipping fees now like $70 a ton. Pretty close. Wet or dry. Tiverton right now, I saw one estimate that said we generate like 5,500 tons a year. I can tell you right off, nobody's ever weighed it. So what'll happen is, we'll contract with the central landfill to deliver X amount of trash a year, based on an estimate the first year. But they'll actually weigh it, and they'll charge us on that weight. We'll have a contract. If you exceed your tonnage, you get charged more.
Per ton?
Less.
Per ton?
Yeah.
They should be happy if we see it.
No, they're not happy, because they're worried about closing too.
Yeah.
So like when I worked in a waste-to-energy plant, where else can you go where they pay you for the fuel that you burn to make electricity? I mean, go figure. So if you go over your tonnage, typically, you're gonna pay more. Plus, there's the expense of the truck delivery. So yes, it's cheaper to have a central landfill so you can compact it because you'll have less deliveries, but you have the same tonnage.
Except less rainwater mixed in.
So you'll have less road time, less mileage, less gas, all that.
And less rainwater mixed in.
Less
potentially.
labor and all that kind of stuff. But then we will absorb the cost if we're gonna have people manning this tipping, this transfer station. And then the town, people are gonna have to pay a fee, to get a stamp so that they can, bring their trash to the transfer station. So there's all these variables that enter into it. But we're gonna have to do it damn soon, because December 2020, isn't that the date? And it's gonna take 6 months to put together a transfer station? So we only have 18 months to get our heads out of the sand and make a decision.
We better finish Grinnell's real quick. Well, yeah, let's go around. Where do we're gonna go? Were you all set, Ruth?
I'm good.
You're good. Jay went, go ahead, Joe. We're gonna go this way.
All right,
Oh, you didn't? I'm sorry.
just, all
We're the,
right,
Yeah,
as
we'll
far
let
as,
you go.
as far as our rate, what we pay, it's based on the ratio. We have to keep our recycling to a certain percentage, or we pay more for the trash tipping. So it's not so much how much we originally, it's what our ratios are. And since we have the trash bags and no bin, no barrel, we've been, actually, our recycling numbers are way up. The original PAR engineering, like some things had changed over the years because it's just been so long. For instance, the cost went down because the type of material we needed for covering the landfill went from rubber to a neoprene, which is a cheaper material. So I'm not surprised that as new regulations came in, they're telling us that, we got to change our plan. As you said, it's been a long time, and as technology changes so quickly, so does what DEM's going to require, but we can still bet it's going to be close to $10 million to close it. I mean, that's, almost a given. One other thing, the transfer station, the way it was described to me, was going to be we're going to have to buy the large cement blocks that you see that we used up at the landfill here, so we can have a raised ramp. where people can back up and dump their recycles into like a huge dumpster. The big 30-yard dumpsters would be behind the wall. So you'd be able to dump everything into there, and then you'd have your large plastic. So we basically would be building what we have now up there.
I envision the same thing.
And we wouldn't be taking trash. Trash would still go on the road, and we could still have curbside pickup for waste, like yard waste and stuff. But we have to handle all those materials. But when it was described to me by Kim, he said they could build it. We have 3 sites that we picked out, 2 up in, this was the landfill committee. We did a lot of research into it. We went out on site visits. We found 2 sites up in the industrial park. And then the 3rd site was at the DPW. They didn't want it in the industrial park because we're gonna be next to businesses. It would have been like under the power lines, below the, where the new Longplex is. You know how the power lines go over to the highway? It's a section of land that you can't build there because there's power lines above. But the council didn't want it there. They were more inclined to put it at the Public Works garage where the big gravel pile is down on the bottom, and use that road that goes in where between the little convenience store. But it was only talking about like less than $100,000 to build that with paving and everything. That's what we came up with. So as far as a study, I don't know if we need to study it. We just need to pick a location and build it. That's what I understood at that time from the other Public Works Director, Barucci.
I have one question for Joe. In that scenario, was one of those dumpsters like a screwdriver compactor thing too, or no? Was that just handled by the trucks?
No, it was, I suppose it could be, but basically it was one for cardboard, one for plastic bottles, and then you had your big plastics, and then you had the big containers that we have, just like at the landfill now, same thing.
Okay.
Except you won't be dumping your trash into it, anything there. All your trash has to go curbside.
Okay, so I'm gonna recognize the administrator.
Thank you. I want to try to avoid some confusion here, because transfer station and recycling center could be one and the same, but it's not necessarily one and the same. The transfer station that is mentioned here, that I was talking about earlier, would in fact be one of the alternatives of what we do with trash. And that would in fact mean, like some other communities are doing, you bring it there, you compact it, and then you use big trailers to go to the landfill and supposedly save money on the transportation cost. That is a whole lot more expensive and also requires design and engineering and everything else to build. Not that it necessarily has to be a fancy facility, but it still needs to be done right, so that's going to cost money. We do think that, it would be worth taking another good look at what we can do with the recyclables, not only the aluminum cans and the paper, but the other materials that you could bring, to a site where you collect it and then, truck it together to the landfill. All of that can be analyzed, but the transfer station itself is a bigger proposition than only those recyclables, much bigger.
That's just the point. You're talking about ending curbside pickup, which would pretty much bring the people out with their pitchforks and,
No, we're not talking about that necessarily. You bring it, you still have pickup, but instead of it being driven by the contractor to the landfill, they would bring it to the transfer station.
Yeah, I think we had talked about that, but they didn't want the trash being kept like over weekends, and I think there was issues with DEM about doing that. The cheapest that we came up with, the trash and the recycles go straight to the landfill. Everything else goes through the collection, I call it a transfer, whatever we want to call it, recycle center.
Yeah.
Everything else goes through there. And that's what we were talking about building on a section at DPW, because personally, I think the best place was me personally thought it was up in the end of the industrial park, but that the council's gonna make that decision.
So doing what we do now, only not at the landfill.
Yeah. Yeah, it would be the same operation that you see up there if you go up there, less than trash.
Okay, so I'm gonna recognize the administrator again, and we're gonna keep moving. Go ahead.
Quickly, I just want to ask what we're doing right now. Because we're not going to make a decision here as to whether we should have a transfer station, or if it is a transfer station, whether it's only for trash or for trash and recyclables. That's another venue where the decision needs to be made. The question is whether we need to take another look at that and spend money on a study, and if the decision is being made that we will have a transfer station, then get going on the engineering design, because there's not a lot of time. That's what this is. This is the budgeting for what needs to be done, not to decide which way we should be going necessarily.
Justin, you all set?
Well, it's obvious, we have the need. We're going to have a requirement. We can't just go off on our own and do whatever we want.
And you've looked at other towns, what they've done, correct? You have, Rick? Give me an example of a town that you think is successfully doing it.
Well,
Transportation.
there's different, Portsmouth,
Okay.
the study takes care of all these things, and it addresses these issues and gives you some comparisons. Little Compton has a transfer station, no curbside pickup. Portsmouth has a transfer station. Middletown, I believe, has nothing.
Do you know how much it costs to build those transfer stations? I'd like to know, and I'd like any comparisons you can get.
No, the study could look into that. And one of the
It
reasons
has
you...
comparisons, you're saying? the
Well,
study.
one of the reasons you have a study is to be able to look at the different options.
Okay, okay, good. Yeah, because I think we're getting a general consensus that we may not need 50 grand for it, but something. Yeah, okay, thank you.
Did I just see a hand up somewhere?
Just to be clear, when we're talking about the study, we're talking about doing a study to see if we want a transfer station. What I'm saying is, most of these decisions have already been made, just because you're talking about $500,000 just to pour the concrete at a transfer station. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't include the metal building and everything else that's got to go in, electrical. If you just look at what Portsmouth cost to build, our cheapest option is to keep what we have and just duplicate what's at the landfill. What I'm saying is we don't need $50,000 for a study. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think that,
I think this research has already been done by our landfill committee. It just needs to be implemented.
I would just simply advocate, don't shorten it, because if you have to do something about this in a year and a half, and if you only allocate X amount of money that doesn't cover the cost, then you haven't really advanced. You need an answer pretty soon.
Right. I think we need to, at the very least, update the analysis that was done. I tend to personally agree that something tells me that the best solution is to keep bringing the landfill. But that's just an intuitive idea. My obligation is just to demonstrate and to prove to the council and to the taxpayers what is the most cost-effective way to do it. And we do need to do an update for that reason.
One other question was, if we allocate, but, did you necessarily use the budget? Or is it possible that you might not need that much, in which case the money would just go back in?
It's possible. The other thing is that, we're doing this budgeting in a somewhat difficult circumstance in that we don't really know where we're going. Because if, say, the town were to be leaning towards the transfer station, then the study could actually do more work already on a preliminary engineering analysis, for
So if
example.
we have the money there to be allocated, if it is needed, it can be used instead of getting stalled and have to.
Correct.
Have to go back.
Right,
Okay,
right.
thank you.
I'm sorry, just a follow-up question, if I could, Mr. Chair. The next 2 years have 350,000 each year for just a study plan?
Yeah, I had to actually increase it from what I originally had planned. I thought that, maybe, but again, I am not at all an expert in terms of how much it costs to build a transfer station, but I thought it could be done for $500,000, maybe at most. And I was told that, that's a dream. It's going to cost more, so I have to put in more money in future years in case. And again, this is just the possibility that we're actually going to build a transfer station.
So this would go toward the building of it?
Right.
Because
That's it.
because this here is, the line item is just for the study plan.
Correct.
But it would, this 350 and 350 would be actually for the
Right.
actual, set aside for actual building if needed, and then if
Right.
not, we would.
And at least we know that we might be looking at that, but we also have the opportunity to adjust the costs in the budget next year and the year after.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on this?
Just to say that the landfill closure testing and engineering, I do agree with that part. It's very expensive to have this plan updated, so those numbers should fill this year's budget, I hope. Yeah, but again, on the transfer station, I think that the math's already been done on that, so I don't think we need it.
Okay. Did you have one? You all set? Okay, so it's 10 o'clock. Oh, it's 5 of, that clock says 10, so that means it's really a few minutes out. So, I'd like to ask a question. On the agenda, we didn't actually need to make a rule up about when to end our meetings, but I would like to say that I got hit by the perfect storm tonight in that we spent what I thought would be 10 or 12 minutes. It was an hour and change.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. And then secondly, part of the perfect storm was that, we've got a large capital budget this year that more items, we know that, which we're not used to. And the third part of it is probably that just the process we're using is going through them line by line and going around the table for each one, which is great and fine. So anyway, with that, and my management, we are at 10 o'clock and we didn't get through nearly as much as I had hoped, which is fine. So we have a choice. We can go later or we can depart very shortly. I would, however, even if we depart, I would like to try to just approve the minutes. And I would like to just go through some of very quickly, the administrative items. And then if we do depart, I think when we go through the administrative items, I'll say what I'm hoping to do, which I put on the screen up here. So, what's that? Well, no, I just want to, the people, what's the sense of the commission? People want to go?
Well, I have a 5:30 punch-in time tomorrow morning.
Okay, I get that. I'm tired.
Yeah, we're dealing with the emergency services with people without the gas, so.
Okay, in Newport, yeah.
So, but what are we gonna do with the rest of this budget?
Well, I'm gonna bring that up. So, I mean, we're not obviously, no matter what we do, we're not gonna get through this whole agenda tonight. And I don't think even if we stayed, we're probably not gonna get through all of Rick's stuff tonight either, so.
I mean, I'd love to give way for Nancy, who's been here all night. I'm happy to come back another time.
Okay, well, but I don't know if the commission really wants to stay, and that's another option, but that's gonna be, at least 45 minutes for Nancy, so, and I'm not sure the commission is ready to stay either, so. I only put it out there if everyone said, let's go, but I'm hearing a couple of members who need to go to work at 5 a.m., so I would suggest that we do a little bit of business to the minutes and these items, and we call it a night, and I'll try to do some magic in the schedule to jam it back in, if that's okay. Okay? And I apologize to Nancy, because you sat in your chair. I gotta get Sally's pillow for you, so.
Can I just ask something? I don't think Nancy would take all that much time at all. She usually is very quick, and I hate to make her
Well, no,
come
but
back.
Nancy's got
Oh.
6 different things on.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's
But her budget's realistic, we burn right through it, believe me, I've seen her budgets.
I understand,
That's what I was
but
trying to-
she's got her budget, Board of Canvassers, financial referendum, probate, municipal court. Now, that's quite a few things, I mean,
Can we thank the gentleman?
yeah.
Yes.
So Rick.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Hold on, thank you
Motion to
very much,
continue.
Rick, we'll be back in touch.
Thank you all.
And we'll be back in touch, so.
Do we need a motion to continue these?
Yeah, so I think what we should do is note where we left, right? We've got to note where we left, so everyone put a line, so we don't forget.
Just want to make sure that-
And whoever's taking minutes, let's note that we got down to town buildings on this page, okay? Thank you. And so I want a motion to continue the items in 4 where we left off, down through and including number 16.
So moved.
Thank you. You get that, Tom? Who moved it, who second? Okay. And then, all those, no discussion, I assume, all those in favor? Okay. Okay,
Justin?
opposed?
Okay, he's, oh, he's.
Oh.
No, we're moving them to the, wait a minute.
Well, yeah, we're moving
Moving
this
them to next week.
next week.
Oh, that's what you're talking
Yeah, yeah.
about? Oh, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I totally
See,
missed
Justin, you're
that.
seeing it.
I'm on the other side of things.
Okay,
I'm with
we'll let you
guys.
fix that. Okay, so, was that unanimous to move these items to next week?
I was out of it last week, man. My brain
Is that
was-
unanimous? Okay. So that was unanimous. Sherry, we know, has left. Like, we know that, but it was unanimous. Tom, it was unanimous minus Sherry. Okay, so, great. So that's done. So now the minutes. I had the pleasure of already reviewing them. Has everyone, they're passed out. Has everyone had a chance to see them? They were emailed about a day ago. Could I entertain I'll entertain a motion and we can, to approve the January 17 minutes. Could I have a motion to approve them?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second that.
Okay, you get that, Tom? So, Jocelyn, and then Justin the second. Now, is there any discussion? Does anyone need any amount of time over and above? And is there any corrections, discussion, any substantial corrections?
There are just a couple of typos.
Okay, let's have them.
In item 3, I'm down about 4 lines.
Yeah,
And it says that members can send, should be send information.
where?
4 lines down?
It's the sixth line
Oh.
down on item 3. The far left, it says, have a central person, such as the secretary, that members can send, should be send information.
Okay, thank you, Brandon.
And then at the very end of that item, the last sentence says, however, Mr. Souza stated, it should be stated.
No, he stated, I remember it.
So it, again, just
Thank you.
word typos.
Like in Seder.
You stated.
And then-
Okay.
Possible, I was kind of tired, I might have.
On the page 2 of 4, in the first paragraph, coming down, the word capital is spelled wrong.
We could totally run these through Grammarly and catch all of
Page
this
2 of,
stuff.
It's the wrong capital.
which, what number is that?
So it would be 1, 2, 3, 4,
9?
5, 6, 7.
Oh.
The 7th
It does usage
line,
and everything.
it's right in the middle. It's CAPIT, it should be
It
AL.
catches stuff that Word doesn't
When you
catch.
see it, tell her.
What's it called, Justin?
It's called Grammarly.
Oh, okay.
Grammar.
Is it 7th line from the top?
Correct.
Sounds
It's
like something I need.
The sentence starts, Mr. Ressman went on to explain that the cap applies to the tax rate,
Bang a nail.
that the town never adopted capital needs, and capital is just spelled wrong.
Capital, right? And if that's the case, it's also down below, number 9. There should be an A on number 9. The capital will be wrong there. And that's maybe a spell checker for, I think we could allow secretary if there's another one. Anything else, Brendan, that you might have found? Is Surratt spelled correctly in number 10?
No,
That doesn't look right.
no,
It's SA.
it's S-A-U-R.
Saurette, right?
Yes.
Okay, it's in 2 places. What else? And it's in 3 places. It's in number 11, too.
10, yeah.
10 and 11, the name Surratt. Let's see.
And there's, spelled differently in both cases.
Which one? What?
Well, it's S-A-U-R. One of them has 2 R's.
Okay. Where else?
It's all gonna get cut.
Okay, there's some corrections already made here in number 12. The word revaluation. And there's some typos that should be cleaned up at some point, usually become. So there's a few of
My
them.
first name on the roster is Brendan, D-A-N.
Okay, there's some typos in the back here. I think those may have been ones that I actually caught at some point. Brendan, A-N? Okay, Brendan, it's fine. Any other ones?
Well, since we're on number 14, inline should be just one word. No dash. Or no, yeah, it should just be two words with no dash. Inline, salary inline, no dash.
No dash?
No dash.
Okay. With that? Okay. Anything else, anyone? So we'll have, I'll note to Sherry to just, obviously, before she posts these and signs them and stuff, we'll make all these little tweaks and make a clean copy of this, and she can sign them and do her magic.
Can we see, when they come to our email and we see them, can we just email her then, or do they have to come before the body like this, that know every single line?
I think housekeeping
email.
issues like that, I mean, if you catch them ahead of time, I don't see an issue with that.
Especially if it's a spelling.
As long as you're not changing the content of the.
What are you talking about?
So like, if we get these all in email, right? If
Which we did.
Yeah, if we see the typos, can we just
That's
email
what we
her
did
back
last-
in one direction and say, these are the lines?
Yes,
So that before we
yes.
come to the meeting.
As long as you don't email it to everybody, you're
Right, as long
fine.
as we just
Then you're
email
not
it to
making
Sherry.
changes.
Yeah, we did that last year.
Because they're
Yeah.
typos, like if we would notice these typos, is that?
No, you
allowed?
definitely can.
I don't see why that would be a problem. I just wonder logistically if, the problem I see is on Sherry's end,
Getting a million.
she's gonna have 11 updates to make, she in theory is gonna have 11 different times to type. It's kind of it might be quicker to just get them all at once and for her to enter them once. I'm just thinking it's easier for us, but it's, for her, it's 11 different, in theory, 11 different times to go on the computer and make updates. You could send the same ones I found. I'm not sure, I'm not sure it's the most efficient. It may be, but I don't know. Sorry. I don't know.
Seems like you're on top of it. I wouldn't know, I wouldn't mind if you emailed me and told me before the meeting. It'd be a lot easier. I don't know how you can ask her,
Let's
All
ask.
right,
It's
we'll
not a
ask her.
violation of
Okay.
ethics codes or anything.
Any other corrections, or we can take a vote on this and move on? Any other questions? Any other corrections, please? Yeah, I'll entertain a vote on these. All those in favor of the minutes as amended? Okay,
I was just having my name.
okay. Abstain? Opposed?
I'm recusing because I was not here.
Abstain. Okay,
Abstain.
one abstention. And who, you were here, no, we're not here, Tom, right?
I was not here.
So you're gonna abstain?
Oh, yeah, I'll abstain as well, I
abstains.
wasn't here.
Okay, so we have,
Abstains.
so those voting in favor, were Justin? No, were Joe, Jay.
He has the abstentions.
Okay, you all set?
He's all set.
And Sherry's not here, okay. We're all set, I'm just trying to make it easy, okay. Okay, the other set of minutes are provided, so I'll entertain a motion to approve the senior center site visit for January 19th. Could I have a motion to approve those?
I'll make the motion to approve the January 26th site visit.
January 19th,
January 19th, oh. January 19th site visit
okay,
And I'll second
to
that.
senior center.
I
minutes.
I will second.
thank you. Is there any, I looked these over, didn't see anything. Is there any discussion or corrections to these?
Just my name spelling.
Okay,
It's Brendan.
No, Jeff.
Stick there.
Never mind.
okay, any other corrections? I'll entertain a vote then. All those in favor of approving these meetings as amended? Whoever was there? I wasn't there. So we have in favor of, we have Jennifer, Brendan, Deb,
Yeah, looks like everybody,
Ruth, not me,
except
Jay, and Joe.
Sherry.
Probably you, Tom, you were there.
No, I wasn't there.
Oh, you didn't make it, okay. Great, so those are done, so I can check on those. Now, administrative items, I just want to take 1 minute and show everyone, I put it up on the screen. I did hear back from, I only emailed, actually, early this morning, Mr. Larkin, the chair of the school committee, and he got back to me very promptly today, and he I confirmed one of his days, and he confirmed what I proposed for a day, so we're good. So you'll notice that I plugged in the school, if you look at the screen, for February the 9th for a site visit. And I confirmed the date that he had proposed, which was the best for the school committee, the 21st, for the Thursday night here, okay? So that works. And you'll also notice that we did the senior center. So tonight, we didn't get to the clerk, and there was a whole bunch of loose ends I shoved on there, hoping we get to them, we didn't. So next week, so far, I have the senior center, and my discussions with Jan at some point in the last 2 days, where we're going to load up a bunch of stuff here. So obviously, what I'm going to do probably is take the items that we didn't cover tonight, including finishing DPW and whatnot, and load them up right here after senior center, okay? So we're going to try to do senior center next week. Why wouldn't we? We're going to do senior center, and assuming we have availability, we're going to try to get through the rest of this agenda, and that'll put us, whatever, catch us up. I'm really going to try to do that.
Jeff, one quick question, or two quick questions, actually. So on February 9th, when we do the schools, are we doing all 5 schools that day, or are we going to split it like we've done before?
Thanks for bringing that up, because I wanted to ask that question, actually, because that's a topic we discussed. So where, and the same thing with fire, the police is easy this Saturday because it's one location. So I noticed that one. But coming out of it, so then we have a meeting next Thursday, and then I need to notice pretty quickly the fire department. So I guess one question is, fire department, we want to go to all the fire departments, or does anyone know? Or is that something I need to work out offline? But I'd like, if the committee can give me guidance on what they'd like to do, I need to notice it carefully. And in the school, same thing.
Couldn't we do Pecasset and the senior center in one trip? Because they're across the street from each other, and maybe a fire station, they're all...
We already did the senior center.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. Could we do a fire station in Pecasset in one? Because the one station's there, and Pecasset's across the school, it's across the street.
Well, I want to first of all ask the question, what fire stations do we want to look at, and what schools do we want to look at? Because I know that the chairman of the school committee, and I think Sally mentioned, that we would want to go to, I think, the high school. And that was where that focus coming from there was, I don't know what the pleasure of the committee is and what schools we want to visit. So I know Joe had an opinion. So I don't know, I want to, before we say we're going to start grouping them, I want to know what we want to do.
Last year we did the fire all together.
And we went to all of them? Were there 3 barns still active, or 2 barns, or?
We started at the main road one, and we went to the 2 others, and it took like 2.5 hours, 3 hours.
Do we have, are there still 3 active barns? Or are there 2 active
Yeah.
barns?
No,
No,
South
three.
End's still open.
Granville,
Okay.
one on East.
I'm fine with that.
And the one on Main.
Okay, there are 3, I didn't know if we still had 3 active barns, okay.
There's
So-
an ambulance and the pump is out.
Okay, and I'm going to recognize Sally for a
Yeah,
minute.
I will take a second.
Sure, please.
But the reason that we had mentioned to see the high school and the middle school, because that was what the bond was for.
Exactly.
So we wanted everybody to see and all the public what their money paid for. I think that was the reason for that. The roofs and the boilers and all that, remember?
Okay,
And last year,
And all the
those
lights
2
and all
tours took the
lights and
time.
the ceiling tiles and everything. I just love everybody to see it.
Okay.
Because they just paid for it. That was, I think that was the thinking of it.
okay,
They're
so,
right near each other, so it could scoot back and forth.
And we did those in one site visit last year,
Yeah, it's
because
really
it took the time to do that.
okay, thank you, Sally. So let's talk about, just because the first notice that I need to pull together is the fire. So we'll get to that, Sally, thank you. I want to have this discussion, though. So on fire, does this committee have an opinion to go to all 3? I just don't know.
I think it's worthwhile because we have a lot of new members.
Okay.
And all the facilities have a lot of different,
Cracks in the wall?
yeah.
Our roof.
I remember that. So I'll just put down all 3, okay, so.
Pretty sure he clocked them finally.
I know, I just figured remember that. Okay, so as far as the school goes, can we talk about that, and then we're gonna try to figure out what makes the most sense. What would make sense for the schools? Does anyone have an opinion? We heard from Sally.
The middle school and the high school.
And then the 3 elementaries on another day.
I had asked, I know it's not sexy, but I had asked to see whatever remaining paving that was not what I'm looking mostly for is the capital aspect. I know we just spent a lot of money, but I'm looking preventive maintenance. If we have parking lots that are spider web cracked, if we can go in there, put the crack seal, we can get another decade out of them by sealing them. So that's kind of what I wanted to look at, was bad parking in sidewalk areas. I know already what we did in the buildings, because, you know, stayed involved in that, so that was my end of it.
Is that for the schools, Joe?
Yeah, I wanted to see what still needed to be repaired, not what we repaired already. That was my request, so if I can get a separate tour, I'd appreciate it.
I think last time they had the superintendent, the gentleman
Yeah.
that was in charge of maintenance there, and a school committee member, and whatever questions we had, or whatever we wanted to see, there was someone on site that could answer all of those questions.
So you would say you
Yeah.
want to see that, they would bring you to see it?
Well, I was hoping maybe for a list of what wasn't paved and what we could save, you know, so that'll come forward, that's what I'm looking for.
Okay.
And I want to look at the stuff on the list that they're asking for money for, that's.
Okay, so Sally, does that need to be a formal request? Did you hear that from the budget committee, or is that?
Yeah.
But,
They'll provide
okay,
it
when
with the
will it be
budget.
provided? I mean, do I need to formally request it, or will it be speak?
So we did a 5-year study, which at this point is probably in year 4 of the 5-year study. So we can provide you with a copy of the study.
Well, this is, my main concern was the capital budget, preserving the parking lots that we can preserve, sidewalks that need to be repaired, the outside stuff. Is there any roofs that weren't done and are going to need to be done in the future? Anything like that, you know, it wasn't covered by the bond, but it's, because I know it was only health and safety. So if there's other stuff that needs to be fixed, cafeteria stuff, whatever, that's what I want to see, the stuff that still needs to be fixed.
Even though it's not going to be proposed in this year's upcoming budget.
Well, it depends how the revenue comes in. I mean, you know, we got some extra, if we have extra revenue,
The superintendent has.
yeah.
Building
I mean, for
related,
capital, I'm talking capital,
Computer.
you know. I'm talking capital, I'm talking building, parking lots, infrastructure. You know, all the computers and all that, I'll let you all fight about whether we need that.
But, so, I just heard that. Is that something, Sally, that you can get to this committee, or do you want me to request it?
Please request that from Dr. Lockton.
Dr. Lockton,
That
okay,
would be the best thing to
okay.
do. And he'll give it to you right away, because we have all those lists.
Yeah.
You know what you mean, Mr. Gold.
Yeah, it's actual facility. Keep it right and tight.
Okay. List. So, references, okay, great. So I put on this list, and I don't know if these are the dates, but I have secured February the 9th, okay? So what I just took with a lead here and said I put high school, middle school for that day, for the 9th. I don't know that necessarily we're gonna do on the 16th, these 3 schools, but I just threw them down there now so that I don't forget that we have to deal with them. The library, I think, is gonna be that day. We still have a couple, I think we wanna also spend a little time doing a town hall site visit at some point.
Nancy just said that to me.
Nancy who?
Nancy just mentioned it.
Yeah, I don't know where we're gonna put it though, and I mean, we,
down as leaving.
town hall somewhere, I don't know where we're gonna put it yet. So anyway, I just wanted to show everyone this.
That's really helpful.
Okay, so that's kind of my working family, work on this with Jan, and, so, anyway, that's kind of where we're at. So this coming weekend, and, for this coming Saturday, they're gonna meet 9 AM, at the police department, right? So there you go.
You gonna do a head count of that, or?
Oh, yeah, who will be there?
I'm not gonna be there.
We will not be there. We have a.
Well,
I'm going, I'll be there with you.
1, 2, who else can be at the police?
But I'm not totally sure.
Okay, can
I'm
anyone
gonna
else?
only go if I can put Ruth in the little jail cell.
I said, I haven't been in the cell in a few years, I'm gonna go.
So who's gonna be, Joe, you gonna be there?
Yeah, I'm going.
Okay, Joe, Jen,
I'm going.
Deb, I got 3. Okay, there's a possibility I'll go, I'm probably not gonna be up north, as long as I don't have a commitment with my son over schools,
You get the tour.
then I will be there.
I wanna look in the attic, see if they put the insulation.
No, it smells great, it's awesome.
Peeled away.
Okay, so, that being said, I think we've exhausted, those 2 items on the agenda. Is there anything else in the back end? Closing remarks, anyone? Then I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Jen and Joe. All those in favor?
I want to stay.
Okay. Have a good weekend, everyone.